Hi, good evening. I'd like to start tonight's meeting, October 1st, 2020, with our World's Best Workforce Annual Meeting. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the district is required by law to have an annual meeting for the world's best workforce, and there are goals that we have to work with that are established by the state, and they elevate the requirements as you make progress. So you not only are working toward a goal this year, but there's a far out effort to reach a longer term goal. So Sarah White pretty much manages that program for us and the report. But I'm going to introduce Amy Ledoux, our Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, who will then introduce Ms. White.
Dr. Peterson, Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight for the World's Best Workforce Annual Meeting. The World's Best Workforce legislation was passed in 2013 to ensure that every school district in the state of Minnesota is making strides toward continuing to improve or increase student achievement, preparing students to be college and career ready, in essence ensuring that each student is prepared with the skills and dispositions that affords them the choices and options upon graduation, and that students are future ready in order to contribute to our global society in meaningful ways in order to lead the state's workforce. Annually, each school district must develop a plan that addresses the 5 goals outlined above. All students ready for school, all students achieving grade level literacy by 3rd grade, closing any achievement gaps that exist among our student groups, all of our students college and career ready, and finally, all of our students graduating. In Minnetonka, as you know, these goals have been embedded in our vision, mission, and strategic plan for many years. This law really just formalized the processes already embedded in our district work. The purpose for tonight's annual meeting is to provide an opportunity to update you and our community on our progress and results from the 2019-20 school year, and to share with you our goals and our strategies for the current school year. As Dr. Peterson mentioned, Sarah White, the Director of Teacher Development, continues to provide the leadership for our district in this area, and will be sharing this information with you tonight.
Thank you, Amy. Dr. Peterson, Madam Chair, members of the board. Every district is required to have an advisory board. I'd like to recognize last year's team shown here. This team meets regularly to review and guide World's Best Workforce priorities. New members are always welcome. Moving on to our 2019-20 results. In the fall of 2019, district administrators, site administrators, and teacher leaders set ambitious goals. They made comprehensive plans to find new ways to meet the needs of students and meet these goals. Teachers were collaborating with their PLCs, with their teacher instructional coaches, with colleagues from Student Support Services, and with their administrators to identify individual students' learning needs and to strategize on how to meet those needs. Teachers were leveraging technology to personalize learning for students and design experiential learning and inquiry-based learning experiences for students. All of these strategies and structures were supporting students in meeting stretch goals. And then, COVID. In rapid succession, in-person schools were closed, and MCA and other norm-referenced assessments were canceled for the spring. The learning curve for teachers and students was incredibly steep as they pivoted to Google Meets and added new digital tools and platforms to their repertoire. Because most spring assessments were canceled, there is limited data on 2019-20 goals. The first goal, ready for school. Although Teaching Strategies Gold spring data is not available, Early Childhood Family Education and Minnetonka Preschool Coordinator Sally Blad reported that progress was made in relation to the Teaching Strategies Gold goals. For example, at fall benchmarking, Just under 79% of preschoolers met or exceeded one of the literacy objectives based on their age and grade. At winter benchmarking, that percentage increased to over 91%. Teachers focused on literacy dimensions in their 2019-20 PLC work. As teachers transitioned to e-learning in the spring, literacy strategies continued to be an intentional focus in Google Meets with preschoolers and through seesaw activities, as was purposeful incorporation of repeated read-aloud research-based best practices. We also had data on ACT scores, as the majority of Minnetonka High School students in grade 12, 87% of them, took the ACT. The percentage of these students who met or exceeded the college readiness benchmark composite score of 18, as measured on the ACT, was 97% in 2020, an increase from 96.2% in 2019. Finally, we also have data around graduation rates. The Minnesota Department of Education prefers that districts use the graduation rates from the Minnesota report card in the World's Best Workforce Report. The 4-year graduation rates for the past year are not available until January, so these goals are based on the previous sets of years. As of September 4th, 2020, Minnetonka's 4-year graduation rate, according to the Minnesota report card, decreased from 97.2% in 2018 to 95.6% in 2019. The Minnesota graduation rate in 2019 was 83.7%. World's Best Workforce also requires districts and charters to ensure that students from low-income families, students of color, and American Indian students are not taught at disproportionate rates by inexperienced, out-of-field, or ineffective teachers. Here you see a screenshot of a staff meeting last spring. In the 2019-20 school year, there were no Minnetonka teachers on performance plans due to not meeting professional teaching standards as defined in the Minnetonka Growth and Evaluation Model, MGEM. Of the 92 long-term reserves and teachers new to Minnetonka in 2019, only 47 of them had 3 or fewer years of experience. These teachers worked in a range of content areas and grade levels, none disproportionately impacting low-income families, students of color, or American Indian students. Minnetonka prides itself on hiring the very best teachers to meet the needs of our students. The growth of our Spanish and Chinese immersion programs over the years has provided a wonderful opportunity to naturally diversify its teacher workforce. Minnetonka strategically hires and assigns students to teachers with the goal of ensuring that students in immersion have the opportunity to have 1 or more native speakers during their K-5 experience. With the board's emphasis on increasing our recruitment footprint, the Human Resources Department is actively developing plans to be more visible in teacher hiring events and channels that appeal to a more diverse candidate pool. Complicating these efforts is the uncertainty around whether in-person recruiting events will go forward. Whether we can be out in person or not, the district is actively assessing advertising and posting sites that appeal to a wider audience than we have typically announced our opportunities. By winter, a full slate of posting options and/or recruiting events will be presented to the board for comment. Moving on to our 2020-21 goals. For most of the goals presented this evening, the data start value comes from the most recent assessment date in 2019. Early childhood and preschool coordinator Sally Glad and her leadership team developed 2 goals for this component of World's Best Workforce. To increase the number of children screened, MCEC leaders will market to parents of infants, toddlers, and preschoolers through digital and social media. Additionally, they will direct mail resident families of children who are 3 years of age. They will partner with area private preschools as well to enhance the promotion of screening. To meet the learning domains goal, all staff will continue to learn more about the GOLD assessment tool. They will create common language and expectations for the use of the tool. Teachers will leverage their PLCs to discuss the data collected and how that data will inform practice. Minnetonka Preschool plans to continue the literacy focus that was part of last year's World's Best Workforce and QComp goals. The language arts curriculum and literacy interventions are the foundation for meeting this reading goal. a language arts curriculum aligned to Minnesota academic standards for language arts, supported by curriculum materials such as Making Meaning, Being a Writer, and Wilson Foundations, are designed to provide Tier 1 support for all students. In addition, Wilson's Just Words, Wilson Foundations, level literacy interventions, and intervention resources supporting phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension provide Tier 2 and Tier 3 support, with interventions delivered by reading specialists and student support services personnel. The district will begin the language arts curriculum review process following the release of new standards by the Minnesota Department of Education during the fall of 2020. The curriculum review process will include a comprehensive needs assessment, specifically addressing early literacy needs, and will ultimately result in updates to the language arts program in the areas of reading, writing, speaking, listening, and language to meet this goal. Setting goals around closing the achievement gap is complex. As we seek to reduce gaps in proficiency, the goal is always to raise the percent meeting or exceeding proficiency for all student groups, while accelerating the proficiency rate for the students not yet proficient. Minnetonka School Board Goal 2, Excellence in Belonging, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, outlines Minnetonka's commitment to understand factors impacting academic performance and to discover strategies for closing all achievement gaps. Strategies for 2021 will include an in-depth review of board vision and district policies, along with associated practices using a lens of excellence, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Evaluate the curriculum review process to ensure it embraces excellence, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This includes adding materials as appropriate where there are gaps in the curriculum. Train all staff, administrators, and school board members regarding excellence, diversity, equity, and inclusion. As you know, a comprehensive list of the strategies for this goal may be found on the district website. Because there was no 2020 data, this reading goal decreases the proficiency gap from 5.4% in 2019 to 3.7% in 2021, and eliminating the gap by 2026. Similarly, this math goal narrows the gap in proficiency from 7.4% in 2019 to 6.1% in 2021, with no gaps by 2026. While the goal for career and college readiness continues with an academic focus, the strategies are broad. They include full utilization of the Naviance tools for students and families, encouraging all high school students to take SL or standard level courses in the IB program, expansion of trades courses through the Momentum program, and continuing to prioritize personalized learning for students and creating multimodal, inquiry-based, and experiential learning experiences for all students. To continue the progress on all students graduating, counselors will monitor student progress towards meeting graduation requirements. Counselors and teachers will monitor classroom assessment performance on a regular basis to make sure all students are meeting Minnetonka grade expectations and will provide options for academic assistance for struggling students. And while I am standing here this evening sharing this report, the World's Best Workforce Plan is truly a district-wide collaboration. I'd like to specifically recognize Sally Bladd, Early Childhood Family Education and Preschool Coordinator, who created and planned for the school readiness goals. Dr. Matt Riga, Director of Assessment, who analyzed data and assisted in designing goals. Jeff Erickson, Minnetonka High School Principal, who collaborated on the career and college ready and high school graduation goals. Dr. Michael Cyrus, Executive Director of Human Resources, who led the work around equitable access to excellent teachers. Steve Urbanski for guidance on curriculum updates. And of course, Amy Ledoux, Assistant Superintendent for Instruction, who collaborated with this team on developing the strategies for 2021. I would also like to inform our viewing audience that a summary of this report is available in the Minnetonka Annual Report, and the full report will be available on the Minnetonka website. So, Matt, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for the annual report. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Mike?
Yes, sir. Excuse me. First, excellent job as always leading these efforts. I did have one question, though, is as it pertains to the graduation rates. So in 2018, it was 97.3, right? And then it dropped, and then we don't have the data for well, we do have the data for last year, but when we're setting the goals, I guess it's on page 22 here, for 2020 at 95.7. So, you know, at 800 students, that 1.6% difference, you know, equates to 13 students. I know our student count's a little bit higher than that, but so it's two parts. One, you know, why are we lowering the bar versus raising the bar and ensuring that these kids graduate? And then as far as those students that aren't graduating, are we tracking, you know, maybe it's they didn't graduate that year, they're coming back the next year, or if they got like their GED instead. So I'm just wondering what, first I guess, what, why was the goal lowered? And then if you could speak to the tracking of those students, you know, that didn't graduate.
Certainly. In terms of setting the goal for this year, I think we just looked to increase in the same proportion that we've set goals for increase historically. I certainly am happy to revisit that with Mr. Erickson and Dr. Peterson, and we won't submit these goals to the MDE until December. So there certainly is opportunity to revisit that. Thank you. In terms of...
Also, I was going to point out that this is a very complicated formula, and some of the kids that are counted as not graduating have maybe been gone 3 years. So they are no longer in Minnetonka, and either we can't ascertain where they are, or, you know, they haven't made progress in the school they went to. So it's really very tricky data, and they keep track of not only a 4-year graduation, but a 5-year period and so forth. So most of this does not mean that our kids at the high school are not graduating. It means that they've either withdrawn when they were freshmen or sophomores or juniors, and, you know, they haven't made progress toward graduation on time.
If they achieve their GED, would they count as a high school graduate?
I believe that's so, but I'm not totally sure of that answer.
And I think it would also depend on when they complete their GED, because the rates that they continue to evolve. They post them first in January, and then the reason I stated that as of October, whatever date I used, it's because the rates may continue to evolve. They typically categorize graduation rates by graduating, continuing, meaning they may have had some life intervention that prohibited them from completing in the typical 4 years, but they're continuing their education, dropping out, and then unknown, as Dr. Peterson was saying.
Now, I appreciate the complexity,
Yes.
and I just, for me personally, I'd really like to dig in further on this and just to better understand, you know, the tracking, the monitoring, the following up, and how far after, you know, if there's a student that was supposed to graduate this year, are we tracking and trying to pull them back into the system, just because, I mean, that's what we're here for, you know, to ensure that they're ready for you know, either college or their career, you know, after they graduate. But again, appreciate the rest report and so much progress in many different ways, but that's just an area that I hope we can do better.
Great, thank you.
Mark?
Hi, sir. Just curious, in 2018, when the graduation rate was 97.2, what was the goal that year? Do you know?
I don't off the top of my head know what the goal was from that year.
Okay. I imagine that rate max over reached the goal that year. So.
Yes, I would anticipate. I apologize that I don't have the
Okay.
historical data for that in
Okay.
front of me.
Thanks.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions? No? Well, Well, thank you. We always look forward to this report, so thank you for giving us the World's Best Workforce Annual Meeting update. Thank you. All right, so moving on, I would like to call tonight's October 1st, 2020 school board meeting to order. Can we all rise and please say the pledge to the flag? All right, and before we have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda, I just want to call attention that you have a carry-in item for the consent agenda, which is the approval of stormwater maintenance and easement agreement with the city of Minnetonka. So just note that you have that carry-in item in front of you. May I have a motion to to adopt tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Thanks, Chris. Second, Mark, thank you. Any changes? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, agenda, motion carries. We have an agenda. And our first agenda item this evening is the school report by Excelsior Elementary. We always love getting our updates from our schools, so looking forward to this. Dr. Peterson?
Madam Chair, members of the board, it is always fun to hear from Excelsior. They do great things there and have the support of their families. As you recall from the parent survey, they're very high level. And you're going to get a little flavor of what life is like in 2020 for elementary students. So, Ms. DeCourcy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, board members, I appreciate having a little bit of your time tonight. I have a couple things to share. One, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what we're going to be doing on Friday at Excelsior. We have an early out. So we have some staff development training, and I think it's just really, really neat what we're doing based on Dr. Dykel's research that he did and the report that we got back from him, fostering wellness and resiliency and stress-reducing activities. So couldn't be more perfect. So I'll pass this around. You can take one. It's just that we have a trainer coming who's going to work with staff and teach them about some strategies they can use in the classroom. And each of our teachers are getting a deck of these cards, and they're different sections. There's mindfulness, there's breathing activities, there's some calming your body activities, some different things. So I'll pass all of this around. You can take one of these. Also, I just have numbers here for you. I thought you might be interested. Excelsior, currently we have 636 hybrid students and 165 e-learning students. So just for your information. And I'll leave that deck of cards. I have several. In true COVID hybrid learning fashion, I thought we would honor our e-learning family and friends. And my board presentation is going to be virtual. So without further ado, Andy. Here's a day in the life at Excelsior. Oh man, I hope it comes because that's all I got, folks.
chimney top, that's where.
They are gonna need you at the high school right now.
Oh, okay.
Can you get there quick?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby. Oh, somewhere.
Hey, Mrs. DeCourcy, they need you at the elementary.
Over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dream of, dreams really do come true.
Excelsior Elementary, it's Mrs. Nelson here. Just want to show you our really neat system that we set up for pickup at the end of the day. Each grade level has a pickup lane pass that has a QR code assigned to their grade level so that parents can let us know when we're here and we can send the kids out one by one rather than having them gathering in halls. So when parents show up at the end of the day, they open up their camera on their cell phone, they scan their QR code, a form pops up. This one is a sample of second grades, and it says write your student's first name. So I'm just going to write test. Test is here. My teacher is Miss Gabriel. I click submit, and then it pops up in the classroom on the teacher's smartboard. So test. That student can go and find their parents in the pickup lane. It's working really slick. Our paraprofessionals who are out in those areas are appreciating how it is flowing smoothly.
Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney top, that's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dream that you.
Thank you. I get a little teary when I see that. Isn't that beautiful? The kids are so happy. I'm happy to take questions. I do want to tell you, the kids are doing great. The kids haven't missed a beat. Masks, no big deal. The adults are the ones who struggle with masks, not kids. But this is hard, guys. It's hard. Teachers are exhausted. Custodians are exhausted. Secretaries are exhausted. But we're making it, is what I'm telling you. We're making it because we're a family. And we're working real hard at things like mindfulness and taking care of each other. I was telling Mr. Cyrus that, teachers are exhausted when there's no sign up for treats on Friday morning. We don't have one yet. And Andy Potter usually has that done in August. So I'm picking up treats tomorrow morning. I picked them up last Friday, picked them up the Friday before. So it's hard, but we're doing it, and it's going well. I mean, the kids are thriving. I loved that mom said, my little girl loves all three of her, or my little boy loves all three of his teachers. That was a concern for me, just worried that they were going to be able to connect in this different way, and they are. The one thing, there are some things that we like. I got to be honest, we like having lunch in the classrooms. It's really calm, it's really quiet. Think of it when we had it in the gym and it's so loud and everyone's screaming and people don't eat. And I've gotten lots of letters or emails from parents saying, we kind of like having lunch in the classrooms. I think after we evaluate over this year, there are going to be some things that we learn from this pandemic and some things that we change. The fact that I can meet with Carrie or Dr. Peterson just by saying, hop on a Google chat. I mean, we used to have to plan that, 5 days ahead of time, but it's so easy to communicate now using Google. So I won't take up any more of your time unless you have questions. I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you for supporting us. We need your ongoing support is what I will say. Yeah. Sure, and I will say it's a little different at each grade level depending on if you have, 3 paras or 3 teachers and 2 paras, or maybe it's a one-to-one. Jen Kitt, for example, in 5th grade, she has her classroom and a pod room. You saw, it was neat that you got to see her doing a lesson. I went from one room to the other room to get that footage. It's working really well. Jen is a tech guru. She's really good at it, and so she has made a smooth transition. Some in kindergarten, they found it better to be in person, so my kindergarten team are just rotating constantly, like every 20 minutes. So it kind of is evolving into what's working for each grade level, but typically we have 3 teachers, 2 paras. And so then the teachers are rotating, and sometimes they're streaming into the classroom. We've had some glitches with technology, but like I said, they're working so hard to make this good for kids, and I couldn't be any more proud. So, and you should be proud too.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful video and the update. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Mike?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I really appreciate the video because I haven't had an opportunity to go in elementary and high school and see it in action, see all the changes. Obviously, we looked and reviewed the different plans, but seeing, the social distancing, seeing how the kids were wearing the masks, adults were wearing the masks, and just, and I thought it was great, that innovative idea about how to call the kids out of the classroom. And that was fantastic, too.
Isn't that brilliant? Oh, it's so good.
And also your comment, too, about how there's certain learnings that after we come out of this pandemic, how certain things will adjust because we were forced into the situation, but we'll be more efficient coming out of it. So.
Absolutely. Paul Bourgeois, I don't think, was thrilled about me painting the M's on a weekend up on the, but you know what? It worked. Did you see them just standing on their M's 6 feet apart? It's perfect. So I probably am in trouble, but I didn't, it's working. We had to do what we had to do, so thank you.
Could you give a little more credit to Miss Nelson for creating that?
Oh, unbelievable. Laura Nelson is brilliant, for any of you who haven't met her yet. Yes, she, I will say, has stepped up beyond belief. She always does because she's just that kind of a person. But she came up with this idea. We were like, how can we keep kids safe? At the end of the day, they usually mob down into one area, and we wait for parents to come. We call numbers. They're sitting in their desks upstairs in their room 6 feet apart, and then that, parents scan that. Parents love it. Parents scan it, and it pops up on the smart board, and the teacher says, okay, Mark, you can go down. Your mom's there. So then they go down. She's brilliant. I mean, she is quick, and she is smart, and thank you, Laura, for doing that. And we're sharing it with all the elementaries. I mean, it really could work anywhere. I told her she needs to patent it or do something, but it's, she's wonderful. If you haven't met her, please reach out to Laura. She's great.
That's great. Does anybody, John, go ahead.
Yeah, awesome update as always, Stacy. 2 questions. One is, how is that rotation going with immersion students? And then 2 is, how are your teachers finding the ability to connect with students who are falling behind?
Yeah, we're all of those things are in progress. I would say, like I just met with, I'm meeting with each grade level team. Like this week I met kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade, and I meet with them as a whole group, immersion and English. Immersion is working just the same way as English. It was interesting today in 3rd grade, immersion had ordered this nifty sound projection pack that they asked me. I said, let's try it, sure. And then the other English teacher said, hey, we want to try that. So they were collaborating, working together. But so immersion is rotating the exact same way that English is. We were really fortunate to find mostly all Chinese in my building, almost all Chinese immersion paras for those pod rooms. We just were very fortunate that we were able to do that. Second part of your question, I'm sorry.
How are you identifying and supporting kids who might be falling behind?
Yeah, student support team has never been stronger. We just met last week. We have a list of kids that we go through each week and get supports, whether it's setting up interventions. None of that has changed. I feel like that all is, if anything, we have 13 kids in a room as opposed to 25. So, you can really hone in sometimes to the, with those kids when you only have 12 or 13 in a room, or 14.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Christine?
As a parent of an elementary student, I just want to say thank you. I mean, the work you guys are doing is amazing, and you're right, the kids are resilient. I think for the first 10 days of school, when my third grader came home every day, I'm like, how's school? How's school? She's like, Mom, it's just school. So they're doing great, and she's in Chinese immersion in another school, and they don't have a Chinese-speaking para, and we've actually found that it's totally fine. It is. It's totally fine. It's her English reading is coming along a little bit better because of that. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you for the video. It was really good to get a glimpse in the life of elementary student. I see that you're incorporating, of course, all the spaces, but as well as the outdoor spaces. Can you talk a little bit about that as we transition? It's getting a little colder.
Yeah.
And, are we still going to be able to do that?
Each building did a little bit differently. At Excelsior, what we did, we broke up we know that kids can have their masks off for up to 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, so we don't want to go beyond that. So we broke up our typical 20-minute recess into 2 15-minute recesses, so we feel a little more comfortable about the masks being off. We worked with Annie, our district nurse, to make sure that was good. So we worked with Playworks, great organization. Playworks is working district-wide with us right now, and we set up zones. We have 5 different zones on our playground. The first week of school, I also took spray paint and painted the zones, but it's gone now because it was in wood chips, so it's gone now. But we painted the colors of the zones on the playground, so kids learned where the zones were. And so we keep each pod in a zone, so we aren't mixing pods on the playground. For me, that's so important to reassure parents that we're keeping that pod as pure as we can. It's sometimes hard, but certainly they get time outside, that's vital. We're keeping it at a reasonable amount of time so they can run around, jump, play, but yet not, be out there for a half hour where we're worried about the contact, so without the masks. The playground's going really well. I'm a little worried about, we'll see what happens in the winter. The one thing is, I have a gym currently right now that I didn't have available, so we could schedule the actual gym time because we have far fewer kids in the building.
Does anybody, Mark?
First of all, you had me at the song. That's one of my favorites. The mix you laid out as far as kids in school and online. I know it's only been a month, but are you getting a feel, or are you getting requests for students to change the format they're in? And
I will say we've had a handful go to e-learning. We've had a handful who are asking to come back in November at quarter break. That's kind of what we had stated. So not a huge, but a handful, probably 5 going, asking to go both ways. So we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. It's been pretty stable.
Okay, what kind of feedback are you getting overall from the students and parents that are e-learning?
Oh, going well. I'm really getting some good feedback. We had some trouble with scheduling in Skyward, so our ELT time wasn't happening as quickly as we had hoped, but that was fixed last week. So we were able, I did get a few emails about when is our English learning time starting, but we were able to get that organized, and Amy Ledoux helped and got that figured out. So otherwise, I'm not hearing a lot. We're looking at doing a survey. We'd like to just see how things are going. And see, parents at the high school seem really happy. Those kids are so excited to be at the high school that, we have invaded the space over there, that's for sure. But it's going well over there too. Yeah, no, I'm hearing good hybrid and positive from e-learning as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in November if we have a group and what the numbers do, what COVID numbers do, I guess, in our county. So.
Yeah, true. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? I have a couple for you.
Good.
Great, really a wonderful video. It really walks us through what it's like a day at Excelsior. And thank you to all the staff. It is incredible to see what everybody is doing and how they've pivoted to implement the plan. And it is, I can only imagine how exhausting it is. So it really, our thanks to everybody. Can you talk a little bit about specials? How is that going, gym, art band, just to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, gym is probably the easiest because we have large space to socially distance, and most of our gym right now is outside. We're using the fields out in the back that aren't part of the zone, so we have enough room back there. Music, I have observed Joel Goetz a couple times. He's spectacular. He ended up going and finding some camera he puts on top that he can stream and have music back and forth between the rooms, but it wasn't something we typically had. So they're seeking, ways to make it work. Art is great. We hired our art teacher at Excelsior is now doing e-learning art, and we hired a young man named Matt Carlson. He's fabulous. He's been doing a great job. Yeah, I think specials are going well too. Like I said, it feels to everyone like it's the first year of teaching. It feels like to me, there are everyday little things that keep popping up that we go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. So we're getting there, but it's just slow. So.
Yeah. And how about parent volunteers? Have you had any?
We're not allowing anyone in the
Not
building.
yet. Yep.
So Mike, I'm sorry to tell you, I probably wouldn't have let you in anyway if you came over.
Didn't want to test my luck there.
You saw in the video, it shows that mom dropping her little one off. So what they do is they sign in out in the lobby, and then the kiddo comes in, we take their temp, we give mom or dad the thumbs up if it's okay, and then they go on their way. So we've really tried, I'm trying so hard to keep that building, to not have the mixing and have people coming in, and people have been super respectful. I haven't had a single parent ask, I'm demanding I come in. They just haven't, so.
Well, as a parent who has had to drop something off for a third grader who forgot it, you just drop it off and you leave, so I get it.
Yeah,
And then for you as principal, what is it like having two schools? Do you get over to the high school very often?
We go to the high school every day.
Oh, that's
Every
great.
single day, at least once. And if there are behaviors, we might go more than once. So, yeah, it's, like I said, we're making it work. We're doing it. It's good. Josh is wonderful at the high school. Josh Steppen is helping us out over at the high school. So we can call him pretty quickly too, but they need us. I mean, they need us over there. They need our presence. I walk into a room and the kids are excited, oh my gosh, she's here. So it's important for us to be there. I think I'm taking a goose tomorrow.
So Mr. Corsi and Mr. McGinley, of course, have both schools at the same time.
Yeah,
The
that's a
other
little
four
tricky.
schools are fine because they have the older kids at 8 and then their regular school at 8:40, so they can easily get back and forth.
Yeah, it's a little
But
tricky.
I thought you just flew between the two.
You saw me. I was fast.
Well,
I usually start my day at the high school, or if I know lunch is going to be tricky, I'll do lunch over there so I can help with lunch. We had a lot of trouble finding enough people to do lunch. We just weren't prepared for what it was going to be like. So, but I think we've got enough staff now to make lunch work.
Yeah. Well, can't wait to hear more about what those silver linings are that
Yes.
work really well in every building
Yes.
that you want to continue to
Yes.
implement once, hopefully when we're out of our pandemic.
Yes,
So,
I keep telling everyone, it's temporary. This
Yep.
is not forever. This is not our forever. And we can do anything. And I think this district is going to be stronger. I think our teachers, our staff are going to be stronger. I really do.
well, sincere thank you for the update
Yes.
and to all the staff at Excelsior.
Yes.
Thank you for all the hard work.
They will appreciate that. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have to go put chickens
Thank you.
away, so I'm going to go. but
All
thank
right,
you.
all right. Okay, it is 7:45. We're going to move on to our community comments, and we do have some guests here that would like to address the board. So before we get started, I am going to go ahead and read our guidelines for community comments. Welcome to the Minnetonka School Board meeting. In the interest of open communications, the Minnetonka School District wishes to provide the opportunity for the public to address the school board. That opportunity is provided at every regular school board meeting during community comments. There are 5 guidelines we have. 1, anyone indicating a desire to speak to an item included in this agenda during community comments will be acknowledged by the board chair. When called upon to speak, please state your name, address, and topic. All remarks shall be addressed to the board as a whole, not to any specific members or to any person who is not a member of the board. If there are a number of individuals present to speak on the same topic, please designate a spokesperson that can summarize the issue. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Longer time may be granted at the discretion of the board chair. If you have written comments, the board would like to have a copy, which will help them better understand, investigate, and respond to your concern. During community comments, the board and administration listen to comments and respond immediately whenever possible. If additional research is needed, responses will be shared at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. Board members or the superintendent may ask questions of you in order to gain a thorough understanding of your concern, suggestion, or request. And finally, please be aware that disrespectful comments or comments of a personnel nature directed at any individual, either by name or inference, will not be allowed. Personnel concerns should be directed first to the principal, the assistant superintendent of for human resources, the superintendent, and finally to the board. So thank you to everybody who came this evening that would like to address the board. I know we have a couple, just kind of glancing through the comments, or I'm sorry, the item that you would want to address. It looks like there's a couple of people that would like to speak to Goal 2, and you've written Policy 504. I did have the chance to talk to a few of you before the meeting, but just want to make sure that if any of you are here together, if you would elect a representative to speak. I don't know if there's anybody.
No, everyone has an individual speech because we all have a multitude of dimensions of identity that are unique and that would be beneficial for you all to hear. So we would ideally like everyone to listen to everyone's speech.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and we're going to limit the comments to 3 minutes. And the first person, please, when you come up to the podium, please state your name, your address, and the topic that you would like to speak tonight for the record. So can Kirby Crow please come to the podium, please?
My name is Kirby Crow. My address is 18505 Minnetonka Boulevard, and I am here to talk about Goal Area 2 and Policy 504. My name is Kirby Crow, and I am a Minnetonka alumni, class of 2015. I am addressing Goal Area 2 and Policy 504. I am proudly pansexual and gender fluid, but I was not always. This district reinforced my internalized homophobia and transphobia. Fixated on my self-loathing, I was unable to build community and demonstrate true allyship for my BIPOC classmates. I am returning to this district and advocating for equity to make up for lost time. In regards to Policy 504 and Goal Area 2, the district cannot simply focus on what students are not allowed to wear, but how the school campuses can transform themselves to showcasing images of support, love, and acceptance. I have been given permission from an anonymous Instagram account known as tonka.lgbt to share a student experience in the Minnetonka School District. This story, I do want to offer a trigger warning because this story does have some graphic experiences in it. To give you perspective, this is only one of 60 experiences posted on this account. This student experience number 1, class of 2021, pronouns he, him. Quote, when I first came out to my friends, it somehow got out to the whole school. Almost 3 months after I came out, I was called the F slur daily by people I didn't even recognize. To this day, 2 years later, I still get called the F slur in hallways, still by people I don't recognize. This eventually led to my first of three suicide attempts, which was met by people telling me, I wish you had done it. You should try again, F slur. These comments haunt me to this day, end quote. This student did what I was too afraid to do. He dared to be himself. But at what cost? What memories of Minnetonka does he have? Can you imagine if this young person was also marginalized because of his race or his ability? If you want to prevent any more emotional harm, you need to do the following. 1, the language you use needs to reflect the magnitude of this problem. This is systematic homophobia and transphobia. Call it out for what it is. 2, listening means talking to students, educators, and parents away from school administration, free of retribution. 3, start making cosmetic changes right now. I present to you 8 progress pride flags. These pride flags incorporate the intersection of race, sexual orientation, and gender in its design. Fly these flags in front of your schools. I present to you each one flag and challenge you by the next school board meeting to have these flags at their respective school locations flying bravely. I also present to you newsletters with a list of equity resources that discuss appropriate language usage in equity work. This is a shout out to my sister Kelsey Crow for creating this extensive language list. Thanks, Kelsey.
And Kirby, you are at 3 minutes. So
I only have a few more sentences, if I could please finish. I challenge you, the school board, to purchase the 9th Progress Pride flag on your own for the high school. If you want to create a legacy of acceptance and excellence, then this is what I have to say to you. Put your money where your mouth is. P.S. In your statement about goal number 2 you released last week, you forgot to mention gender. You might want to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your feedback and sharing your experience. The next person that I'd like to invite to the podium, Sumoya, is it Elmai? I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. Okay, I couldn't tell if that was an E. When you come to the podium, will you please state your name, your address, and the topic? And before you start, Jackie, just want to let you know that I see on here the next 2 are outside, just to let you know. Do you need the names? Scott Streff and Jeff Kiffin. Yep. Okay, sorry, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Samaya Elmi. I am 17 years old. I live in 1131 Landmark Trail South. I am a core member of the MCE. I'm here to address my disappointment with the lack of progress of meeting goal number 2 and policy 504. I want to tell you guys a story. When my mom showed me the pamphlet for MHS, I immediately dreaded the upcoming school year. Despite the token diversity on the front page of the pamphlet, I already knew Minnetonka was going to be 99% white students. As a Black Muslim woman born from immigrant parents, I do not have a good experience with white people. Imagine the shock I was in when I learned I was going to spend the next 4 years of my life attending a dominant white school. I have made many friends and many good memories at the high school, but there were times where it was evident that I didn't belong in this community. In freshman year, in my geometry class, as I sat alone, never speaking and keeping my eyes down, I've had seniors harass me with racist and diminishing comments. They were not afraid because they had strength in numbers that I didn't have. Do you know what my teacher did as I sat in the back being tormented by my upperclassmen? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I've had friends who were called terrorists out in the open. Do you know what actions were taken to stop this? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. As you can see, we have a systemic problem. We have teachers who are not educated and trained enough to help their minority students out. We have students who have no fear of making discriminatory comments because they know there will be no consequences. On the other hand, we have BIPOC students who are afraid to speak on their treatment within the school district. What makes it worse is instead of pushing for this goal 2 to be reached, we have some community members who say educational equity is un-American or brainwashing. It is wrong for me. Is it wrong for me to want to feel included in this community who has made it clear many times that I am an outsider? Is it wrong for me to not want to see hate symbols on my peers' clothing because it makes me feel like I'm in danger? Is it wrong for me to want our schools to be teaching about diverse groups of artists, scientists, and etc. so that my younger BIPOC students have someone to look up to? Is it wrong for me to want our schools to stop teaching whitewashed versions of our history? I don't think so. I am a global citizen, and as such, I need to receive a global education. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to call Scott Streff to the podium. Scott, will you, when you reach the podium, will you please just for the record state your name, your address, and then also the agenda item that you would like to discuss tonight?
My name is Scott Streff. My address is 110 Choctaw Circle, and I would like to discuss the reopening of schools. I first off would like to thank the board for having me in here to speak. I would like to speak about the reopening of schools. I feel that having us be all online with one day during the week is doing a great disservice to the student population of the high school. I feel that we need to be in school much more often, and that calling it a hybrid, even though it's only one day a week, does not do it justice. I think me, as well as the group of students outside, feel that we need to be in school to receive the same education. It is extremely difficult to learn the complex concepts that we are trying to learn online, and the integrity of tests and the integrity of classes are being compromised. There are people cheating on tests, sleeping through classes, and this is just not something that I think the Minnetonka High School can afford to have. I believe that we should share our space, not just with the fifth graders, but possibly have us, if not maybe leasing space for the high school, find some way to get us more involved and see our classmates more often. This has taken an extremely adverse mental effect on most of the high school students. Mental health is something that I think Minnetonka should take far more seriously. I think that not enough is being done, especially in a time like this where we are almost all online. Students are struggling with isolation, they're struggling with not getting enough exercise, and they're struggling with how do I see my friends in a safe manner. I think that if we can execute the mask mandate in schools and socially distance, that high schoolers should have more of an opportunity than just one Wednesday here and there to come in and see teachers. I'm in difficult classes, and I feel that it's extremely hard to learn these concepts online. I would urge the school board to find some way to get high schoolers back into school and to maybe share our space with the fourth and fifth graders a little bit better. I feel that we are not being done justice by the school board, and that it is an extreme injustice to have us all online. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Jeff Kiffin to the podium. Jeff, when you reach the podium, will you please state your name for the record, your mailing address, and then the item that you'd like to speak on tonight?
Absolutely. My name is Jeff Kiffin. My address is 6520 Nez Pierce Drive, Chanhassen, Minnesota, 55317. And I'd like to speak about opening the schools. To follow on Scott Streff's sentiments and comments, I'm here to be simple but very direct in how we're failing our Minnetonka High School students. By not having them in school and being online and calling this model that we've created a hybrid model is not only an injustice, it's really a redefinition of the term hybrid. This is not a hybrid model. Let's be clear and direct and honest with each other. Our neighboring schools are finding ways to get their students back in 2 days a week. Social interaction, the quality of engagement and in-person classes versus online is immeasurable compared to where we are today. If anybody has audited any of their students' classes online, I'm fortunate I have a student that's pretty gifted and it has a high GPA. It's a joke. It's a complete joke. I was outside earlier. The difficulty of Wi-Fi and connectivity was found out there in streaming. We couldn't even hear half of the message going on in this meeting. And this is a school building, correct? This is the technology that our kids are supposed to be leveraging and using. It's not working. We're failing our students. We have overcomplicated and created a 7-point plan that was very well articulated and thought through, but was overcomplicated. Make it simple, make it fair. We failed 3,300 plus students. We are failing 3,300 plus students. The class of 2021 is going to go down as the first forgotten class in Minnetonka history. Are we going to memorialize them with a gravesite like the forgotten soldier? I think not. I ask each of you when you go home tonight, look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself one question. Are you doing the right thing for every student in this school system? There's no way that answer is yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Lena Pack to the podium. Lena, will you please state your name, your mailing address, and then the item to be discussed this evening?
Hello, my name is Lena Pack. My address is 15835 Woodgate Road South, and I'm here to address the topic of Goal 2 and Policy 504. I'm in full support of banning hate symbols from the halls of our schools, and I'm impatiently waiting for the rest of the values from Goal 2 to be put into practice. So far, the action that has been taken has been limited to performative allyship, which does nothing to actually improve the BIPOC experience or make amends to those who have been oppressed. Beyond just banning hate symbols, our curriculum must put in the work to explain why these hate symbols are harmful, and our teachers must have the tools to enforce and explain this rule. Teaching students how to critically think about the way BIPOC perspectives are represented and how to empathize with BIPOC perspectives will empower every student to become more curious, decrease preconceptions and stereotypes, and increase global socio-political knowledge. When I met with you in August, we also discussed the importance of direct language. Yet in your recent statement, you still failed to use the words racism or anti-racism or bigotry or any of the words naming the actual problem that we are trying to solve. If you are too afraid to name the problem, you have no chance of actually being able to fix it. When you use indirect or fluffy language, you keep the narrative of white supremacy comfortable while everyone else is pushed aside. You must over-represent the voices and needs of those being silenced in order to offset the oppression they face. Otherwise, we will never be heard on equal ground. As I was trying to write this, I kept getting frustrated. And I think it's important that you hear and understand why your students are frustrated. So here it is. You should be up in arms in the fact that our Black students dread going to school for the fear of being called the N-word, that Asian students are being made fun of for their food and languages, that queer students are being belittled and invalidated, that mixed students are being fetishized, that your students on 504 or IEP plans aren't getting the support or empathy that they need. You should be furious. But from my perspective, you have done nothing but send out fluffy emails and hold listening sessions that do nothing to create real action. You have been complicit in the racism in this district, and I hope that makes you uncomfortable. I want you to feel a fraction of the discomfort that marginalized students face every single day. Maybe that will inspire you to finally enact meaningful action. Due to your previous record, I doubt it, but I hope that you can prove me wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I would like to invite Deep Tai Pillai. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, I apologize. Please let me know. And Jackie, just to let you know, the next two have lower level written on them. So it would be Janice Bradburn and David, I think that says Evans. Okay. That's next. Okay, apologies, thank you. Now, for the record, will you please state your name, your address, and the topic?
Hi, I'm Deepti Pillai. My address is 9901 Frederick Place, Eden Prairie. I'm going to be addressing the Goal 2 statement from the consent agenda. I am confidently able to say that I am displeased with the way this district is ran. Many students like me do not get the pleasure of having a normal school experience similar to those of their peers. They watch themselves and students who look like them get ridiculed for their cultural identity. In this district, students of color must relay their emotional trauma for their white peers to get a glimpse of what it's like to be a student of color in Minnetonka. Students here are not taught to respect their peers who are different from them, and those who are different are never shown the importance of their individuality. The school board is not to be blamed for each and every student's actions, but you are well aware of your ability to make minority students feel more welcome and safe in this district. You have been offered ideas on improvements, you have been met with the concerns from several families and students, you have been encountered by MCEE several times, yet somehow you willingly sit and watch the students of your district struggle. When I learned the school board was willing to incorporate our imperatives, I was ecstatic. Even if I found the statement slightly vague and was not explicit to the genuine problems from students, I was excited to believe things were changing. That high of joy quickly dissolved after learning that the school board had already failed to follow through with their promises by the end of September. By 12, I learned the horrors of how the school board reacts to those with concerns. I am now 14 years old, and it seems as if nothing has changed. What does that say about the school board? Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to invite Janice Bradburn to the podium. Janice, will you please state your name for the record, your mailing address, and the item that you would like to discuss this evening?
My name is Janice Bradburn. I live at 5101 Kimberly Road in Minnetonka. And I am addressing the 504 Student Dress and Grooming Code. Good evening, School Board and Dr. Peterson. 2 weeks ago, you had a study session regarding student belonging, which is a euphemism to help you and many parents in the district feel more comfortable, because apparently the words equity and systemic racism are too difficult to say. Tonight, you're going to have a second reading of policy number 504, Student Dress and Grooming Code. Although the words sound good, it will fall short of its intended outcome. It is not explicit enough as to what is racist, and there is not a tool for students to anonymously report their concern or fear to the school. Instead of dancing around the issue, the board needs to address the symbols of hate head on. I'm curious as to what you would define as a racist symbol. I see vehicles in the parking lot displaying the Confederate flag, for instance. Will you allow T-shirts with the Confederate flag? The Confederate flag is not political. It is, in fact, the Stars and Bars as we know it today was flown not for the Confederacy. It was developed after the war as a direct response of white men wanting to suppress black people. How about the OK sign? Are you aware that this is a symbol for white supremacists? I have direct experience with the white students greeting each other in the hallway when I worked at a high school, and how that made BIPOC students feel who were around them. Recently, I learned of a story that a symbol on teachers' doors indicating that a classroom or teacher was a safe place for those who identify as LGBTQ were not allowed, and that symbol let that student know that it was a safe classroom and a safe teacher. If the story is true, how can I know that you will protect students who are marginalized from hate symbols? I have talked with BIPOC and LGBTQ alumni whose memories of Minnetonka are of the hatred they received, not the enjoyment they experienced in high school. This is the legacy Minnetonka left with these students: marginalization, cruelty, and hate. Minnetonka's sole focus on excellence and test scores and ignoring the well-being of its students is appalling and embarrassing. Our other nearby districts have addressed racism head-on and pledged to dismantle it in their curriculum, and how they educate their staff and teachers about culture and diversity, and how they will address racism within their district. Minnetonka can't even use the word equity in a statement to the community, much less racism or Black Lives Matter. In fact, I think I missed the statement promised by the district because it was so watered down to make the dominant culture comfortable. Giving updates every 2 weeks was asked for by students and is a common occurrence in businesses and companies.
Janice, you have reached your 3 minutes.
I have just a little bit more. How will you give updates on goal number 2? How will you reassure the marginalized students and families of the Minnetonka Public School community that you care about them? Why aren't you listening to the students? Why aren't you going to them to learn more and ask how they are being treated and what needs to be done? So bring it back to hate symbols. I'm wondering how you will keep up with that with what constitutes a hate symbol. Overnight, the white supremacist group Proud Boys changed their motto and logo to Stand Back, Stand By. And I'm quite sure that if the high school was in full swing today, we would have seen it on t-shirts already. Are you going to be able to recognize it and do something? Wouldn't it make more sense to address racism head on and let the community know you are serious about abolishing systemic racism and that we are all a part of the dominant white culture? 2 weeks ago, we heard from parents who said it's political and about hating whites. They said equity is about equal outcomes. I can assure you, treating people with equity is not political, it is humane. Equity is not about outcomes, it's about equal opportunity. And I always thought that was the main goal of education.
Thank you. Jackie, was David Downs? No, okay. All right. I would like to ask, is it Cindy Shelton to the podium? Cindy, can you please, when you reach the podium, can you please state your name, your address, and the item that you would like to address this evening? Thank you. And you can remove your mask if you want to, yeah.
Thank you. So, my name is Cindy Shelton, Huntington Avenue in St. Louis Park, and I just wanted to address the school board members. I'm grateful that you all have chosen to volunteer your time to provide outstanding education for kids. I know that you have countless hours here to create a prize-winning school districts, and I know that this volunteerism is not easy. You're responsible for the education of 10,000 students who have diverse needs and have faced significant pressure to adopt controversial agendas. And despite all of this, you make us all feel like, okay, your voices are heard. And last month, I stood before you with concerns about Goal 2. Many of the statements in Goal 2 are controversial, not because we don't all agree that equity is a great thing or that we all want a sense of belonging, but because those phrases have been used to divide communities. I come from a school district where that happened, where words like equity, systemic racism, Black Lives Matter fell strictly on one side of the political aisle that was forced into our communities. And the reason why these are so controversial is because when you see on the news, when you see on any school districts, whether it's Edina, Eden Prairie, Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, St. Paul, a lot of these politically charged issues only one side of the aisle is allowed to be heard. And so I think your commitment to making this a politically neutral place for everybody is really a tough one. And I think you've done a great job of listening to the community. Anytime that there's racism or racist comments or homophobic comments, those all should be addressed immediately. And I know that you've made many comments that those have been and will be, and education needs to happen to those kids and needs to happen to those teachers, absolutely. But what's concerning, and I'm glad that you're seeking a politically neutral setting, is that when you force an entire school system to go through training that is politically charged, one side of the political aisle, you'll never hear from the Larry Elders, you'll never hear from the Candace Owens, the Brandon Tatums, the Jason Rileys. I mean, there's a lot of African American leaders that you'll never hear from when it comes to these buzzwords that mean really politically divisive areas. So what I really want to stress in my comments here today is to thank you for listening to the Black man that came here a month ago at the same time as I did and said, thank you for giving my 4 Black children the education here at Minnetonka schools. The best thing you can do for my Black children and any Black children or any child from any color is to give them a good education, because that comes before anything when it comes to having them have a great life outcome, happiness, a sense of belonging, a sense of being part of a community, a community that's not divided by politics, a community that's united by your words of
Cindy,
commitment, excellence.
You've reached your 3 minutes.
All right, so thank you for your hard work. I know it's difficult, and I feel for everybody that has had anything happen to them. Let's address that, but let's not try to make this political. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Brianna Fitzpatrick to the podium. Brianna, will you please state your name, your mailing address, and the item that you would like to discuss this evening?
Hi, I'm Brianna. I live at 17407 Sanctuary Drive, and I'll be addressing policy 504. So before I get to what I want to discuss, I want to make sure that we're all thinking about all the voices that aren't here right now. If we look at this board, we would say that everyone's pretty much white, so there's a lot of voices being left out. When you make these decisions, think about those voices. And a voice that's normally always left out, that's not representative in our community and in our schools, is the indigenous population. We're on their land, so we need to take those voices in consideration as well. So I'm an alum of Minnetonka, and I graduated in 2015. And I've spoken with current students, and I've seen that Minnetonka's gotten exponentially worse. And so I didn't realize that during my time at Minnetonka, I hated myself. I'm gonna be honest. I hated my blackness due to the students and the culture at Minnetonka. And so I didn't realize that was political, to hate myself. I was a student doing very well at Minnetonka. I had over a 4.2 GPA, did really well, ended up going to Carleton College, a top liberal arts institution. So even though I did well, I hated myself. I'd probably had depression, and I would never, if I could choose, if I wanted to go back, I wouldn't go back. Students at Minnetonka who are BIPOC are being gaslighted by people in front of us today, by staff and faculty, by their own peers, and they're leaving the schools because they're being targeted and feeling so hurt so bad that they feel they have to leave. And then the fact that they've even come here today to express their concerns for the rights and justification and respect that they should have at school to have a safe space is absurd. And the fact that some of you here today have gaslighted them in the past makes it even more intimidating. And you guys are already at a high level of the district, so I can't even imagine having those students come here and speak to you today. And this isn't even a conversation I should be having, because the respect that these students and rights that they should get should be a given. All students should feel safe at school. That should be the #1 thing. How can you learn if you don't feel safe at school? I want you to think about that. And also remember, you guys have never had these experiences. You will never know what it's like to be of the BIPOC community or the LGBT community or being neurodiverse. You will never understand that. So I want to know, for policy 504, who did you talk to determine how BIPOC fits in to addressing their concerns in policy 504? And how did you determine their needs into this? And so that's my question for you guys. And also, where's the urgency? Because students are leaving, students are unhappy, and honestly, I'm disappointed. There's no action, and you guys should be doing better. This isn't the students' job to educate you all. You guys should be doing it. You guys should be finding those voices, because there's a lack of voice being represented here, and you guys should know that, and you guys should be doing something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Jing Bang to the podium. Jin, when you reach the podium, will you please state your name, your address, and the item that you would like to address this evening?
Okay, and I'd like to keep my mask on, so can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So my name is Jin Bang. I reside at 3950 Linden Circle, Excelsior. And is that enough for my introduction?
And the item you want to discuss?
Oh, and the item I'd like to discuss is the policy 504 and goal 2. Okay. So I've been a student at Minnetonka since kindergarten. And as my school career progressed, I realized that the school system and narrative was one where I was ignored and not represented. Throughout middle school, I became accustomed to this fact, convincing myself that I only had X amount of years left until graduation where I could finally leave and be myself. I didn't think that I had any power to try to change this system that I was in. What was I, a mere student, supposed to do to change a system that has been held in place for decades? I wouldn't even know where to start. The idea of the school board, to whom I currently speak to today, was just an abstract idea in my mind. A council of unknown people in control of my education. In fact, I didn't even know that school board meetings were a thing that people could attend and say their own comments like I'm doing right now until this summer with my work with the MCEE.
There are so many that, like I once did, live in unknowing of the school board, unaware that the school board decides on so many important things that are a part of our education, especially like your goal 2, focusing on diversity and equity. We must reconnect that link between the school board and the community. Transparency is necessary to build that trust between school board members and the people that you all represent. The MCE and I personally, in one of our many meetings with the school board, like in August, have repeatedly emphasized the importance of transparency and knowledge, and with the request of updates every other week on the process of the goals, or a summary at the end of September with these goals being established. The school board must be able to be held accountable. All this work that is being done behind the scenes must be informed to the community. We must pull back that curtain and truly see how our school board is working to make Minnetonka a better and safer place for all of your students and people. Are people just supposed to sit idle and continue suffering through experiences like those that you have heard today, just waiting to see when your goals will be put in place, unknowing? We need real benchmarks that people have access to. People shouldn't have to actively seek out what the school board is doing to make education more equitable. The burden does not rest on us students to find information to see how you guys are working to make our school equitable. It is your responsibility as our representatives to communicate your work to the people, showing us that you're actually taking steps to stay true to your words. You said in your goal 2 that, quote, "We believe that students who feel a sense of belonging or connectedness to their school are more likely to experience success inside and outside the classroom," end quote. So please, foster that sense of connectedness to Minnetonka and communicate with your students and representatives. Because there's so much that's going on that we don't know what's going on. And even if you say that work is being done, if we don't know, we cannot hold you accountable to that work being done. So thank you.
Thank you. And I believe this is the last community comment there is, so if there's anybody else, please give Jackie your card, but I would like to invite James Johnson to the podium. James, when you reach the podium, can you please state your name, your mailing address, and then the item that you would like to discuss this evening?
My name is James Johnson. I live at 25680 Wild Rose Lane in Excelsior, Minnesota, and I'm here to discuss Goal 2. I'm a 2019 graduate of Minnetonka High School, and I want to first thank the board for being here. Along with Dr. Peterson, it's an honor to be in your presence. You've done a great job with this community and with this school. I can attest to the opportunities Minnetonka Schools provides all students. I'm here today to protect the rights of future graduates to have a political neutral environment at Minnetonka. If Goal 2 supported excellence and belonging for all students, it would have my deepest support, but it doesn't. Instead, Goal 2 is focused on students who feel like they don't belong because of race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, country of origin, or socioeconomic status. Focusing on this list assigns a priority to students whose belonging concerns fall outside of the list. When it comes to excellence and belonging, one student should not be prioritized over others. My second concern about Goal 2 is the implementation of diversity, equity, and inclusion training. Students should be educated, not trained. In school districts across the country and corporate offices, diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings are an attempt to indoctrinate participants. Minnetonka schools deserve a political neutral education where their values come from their parents and not the school district. Being a student at Minnetonka, as you can tell with my mask, I am a pretty hardcore conservative. And also I support the Confederate flag, and by that, I've been called the house nigger and Uncle Tom by people of color and people who I don't agree with, who don't agree with my politics. So you guys need to not have this politically left school district. I don't care if it's not politically right. I want you guys to be politically neutral. Teach us about the past, teach us about our histories. Don't ban the Confederate flag just because some people think it stands for racism. That's my heritage. That's my people's history. My family, we came over on slave ships, and I'm proud of that. So I'd like to thank all of you guys for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you. And I would like to invite David Evans. I think it says Evans, to the podium. Okay. David, when you reach the podium, will you please state your name for the record, your mailing address, and then the agenda item you would like to discuss this evening?
Hello, David Evans, 5040 Meadville Street, Greenwood, 55331. So I graduated Minnetonka in '86 and loved the whole experience. A lot of great teachers. And 2 years ago, I saw all of you. My daughter Lindsay graduated 2 years ago, Minnetonka. So I saw all of you at US Bank Stadium. And over the 2 hours at US Bank, it started to dawn on me, I think you guys have created one of the best high schools in the nation. The dozens and dozens and dozens of high achievement awards that were received students. It seemed like hundreds of students with extra achievement. So I'm sure I started to gather you're one of the top high schools in the nation. Is that correct?
Yep.
And over the 2 hours at US Bank, Dennis, Katie, and Mike especially, you guys were beaming, and the medallions and the gowns and the diplomas, and it was truly, it was breathtaking. So I know, over the years, and especially the last 2 years and that night, I started to figure out that this is one of the top high schools in the nation, which that would mean it's one of the top high schools in the world. My dad graduated Minnetonka the first year it existed. In whatever year that was, his first 3 years of high school were at the Excelsior school. But I wanted to thank you. Lindsay is at Madison, and she'll finish college in just a few months, 2 years. So whatever you guys did, she had AP credits coming out of her ears, and college is 2 years instead of 4. Some people 5, but Lindsay 2, and so she'll go on and get a master's degree. So I think you're one of the top high schools in the world, and I think, and you helped create what I became. I got into music, I became a writer to some degree, and I've spent 35 years in nutrition, and I think nutrition is one of the ways through a pandemic that doesn't get talked about. Vitamin D, zinc, etc. Water, avoiding sugar. Well, I remember my first nutrition class was at the high school, and it's affected me to this day. The last 2 hours I tried to put an outline together of a speech. I can only do that because I learned to do outlines at Minnetonka High School. And I probably should have made some notes, but I felt somewhat confident. I just wanted to remind you that you're one of the top schools in the world. And 2 years ago, what I saw at US Bank Stadium with graduates was excitement, achievement, prospects for the future. And the theme I wanted to get to here was courage. Everything you've been doing the last number of years to put my daughter through Minnetonka High School, and shows up at Madison, and you're halfway through college because of what she did at Minnetonka. I know it wasn't just Lindsay, it was you guys. And I could tell your speeches at US Bank. I could tell Lindsay, she was on, you guys shot her to the moon. And,
David, you've reached your 3 minutes.
oh, I didn't know. Oh, can I make a conclusion? I didn't
Sure.
know I had
Yeah.
only 3 minutes. This is ironic based on Tuesday night. 2 minutes. I want sincerely for you guys to, this next chapter, to remember your greatness and lead by example with courage. The rest of the nation and the world will look to you guys. And I don't want you to cower in a infinite layers of safety and overprotection. I want you to look at the science, look at Sweden and Scandinavia and Asia and Russia. Schools are opening across the world. And my wife and I, we're not afraid of, now I have a daughter entering 9th grade. She's been to the high school for 1 afternoon. And we're getting horror stories that it's just depressed. It's like a gulag. It's just mask up. And so we're nervous even if you reopen, just, I want you to remember your greatness. I've seen your greatness over the years. I think you were there when I don't know how long you've been there. But I came here to praise you to the moon because you're launching students to greatness. And I want you to remember your place in this nation and in this planet as one of the top high schools in the world. I want you to lead with courage and extreme science, race to a better solution. You have hundreds of parents ready to rock and roll and ready to take risk. Do you create another wing, the courage wing? We're not at all afraid of, now Brooke is entering 9th grade, my other daughter. She's first year at the high school where my dad graduated, where I graduated, where Lindsay graduated. We're ready with courage. I'm not afraid of Brooke getting us sick. My mom and dad are not afraid of Brooke getting me sick and me getting them sick. They want to build a student like we built Lindsay and my dad and me.
Thank you.
I only have the courage to speak to you tonight partly because I went to Minnetonka High School. I truly want you to lead with courage and be at the front of this, not cowering in a safe cocoon. Lastly, on the race issue, I've loved black culture my whole life, musician. It never even dawned on me to not love black culture, not just tolerate it. I'm a musician. We love it. So
thank you.
You don't have to be afraid that we're creating intolerant people. You've created loving people. But I pray that you will consider create a wing for the courage kids. Do something, but this is frightening.
Thank you for coming this evening. We appreciate you coming.
You see what
to
I'm
share
saying?
Absolutely.
I didn't know how to package it any smaller. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for
And
coming
thanks
this
for what
evening.
you've done for Lindsay. I hope you can do it for Brooke.
Thank you.
And thanks.
Thank you. And it doesn't appear to have anybody else, correct? No? So before we move on to our next agenda item, I just want to say thank you to everybody that came this evening to share their feedback and to voice their opinion with the board. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming this evening. Our next agenda item this evening is, give me 1 second to flip a page, is the opening of school report. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the opening of school report is always given up front, as you might expect, for the opening of school. This year, our board meeting in September was actually before we got started, so it didn't seem right to give you a report as early as September. And so Dr. Cyrus is going to give you his first school report. Tim Alexander gave it for 12 years, and so he's worked closely with Dr. Cyrus to make sure we follow some of the same format, but we're always open to suggestions for improving this report in future years. So without anything further, I'd like to have Dr. Michael Cyrus present this report.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson, Madam Chairperson, and members of the board. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. This is my debut appearance with you all, and I just want to thank you. It's really an honor, and this is an extraordinary district. And I came from half the world away just for this opportunity. I came a year early, as a matter of fact, so you've earned my mother's undying support. She's even threatened to move here just to vote for you guys. So I want to thank you for that, for bringing me here and for this opportunity tonight. It's my pleasure then to talk to you a little bit about the opening of school, and here we go. On a district level, you can see, if my memory of my graduate school statistics classes are correct, that basically we're flat. There's a tiny difference of about 0.5%. Oh, this is advancing itself. But essentially, our enrollment remains steady. Here you see the 11,052 that we have, just down slightly from 11,070 the year before. If we look at the elementary school alone, each building, they are almost exactly where they were the year before. We have 2 schools that are up by about, between 1% and 2%. That's Deep Haven and Groveland. And the others are down somewhere between 2 and 2.5%. Overall enrollment at the elementary district, our elementary schools, is down 1%. If we look at middle school, you'll see there that again, very steady. You're looking at a decline of just about 0.5%. So just a handful of kids are not with us any longer. In terms of the high school, it's actually grown a little bit from last year to this year. It's up about 1.5%, and that's a remarkable, I think, achievement given the context of the pandemic and the open enrollment situation that we have here in Minnesota. For lack of a better word, I've called it venues. The district basically has 2 this year. You've got an online version, which we call e-learning, and then you've got the hybrid, which is basically the students that are in the actual buildings getting in-person instruction. The kids at elementary and the middle school level had a choice to opt into either the online version or come back for hybrid. And about 17.5%, so definitely less than 20% of the kids opted for full online learning. Now, as you know, and as you've heard, the high school students are pretty much fully online. They've got their 1 day a week that they're in the buildings themselves, but I've considered that to be more of an online experience. If you look ahead just at our average class sizes across these 2 venues, they're very similar, and the district has been very observant of that and trying to make sure that whether a student is online for learning or in the buildings, that it's almost the same. I've raced ahead a little bit just to look at what would this look like in the future if we bring them all back together, and you can see that it's basically it's very, very close from one venue to the next. If we dig in a little bit at the elementary level, we're here, I'm showing you instead of building by building, but grade level by grade level. And coming from a private school environment before this, I've never seen numbers that are almost exactly 1/6 for each of the grade levels. So that's something that's pretty amazing in itself. What we have done, let me show you the next one, is that when we talk about our means, there's also an effective mean that's going on. And as you heard when Ms. DeCourcy was up here, we've hired a paraprofessional to be with almost every teacher so that we can ensure that no group of students is more than 15. So when we look at a mean, the effective mean of what kids are actually experiencing in their classrooms is around 13 students per section that they're in. The next one, we'll start to look at, how do our class sizes look in relation to the schools that are in our peer group around us. And here we've shifted back to that number where I kind of raced ahead, where we looked at all the kids in the district, how big would those classes be? Because the number that we're comparing against is pre-pandemic. This would have been a full year ago, and so we want to see how we're doing. And as you can see in terms of the elementary grades, we are, below the average just about everywhere. The blue bar would have been that year ago regional number, then green is last year for us, and purple is the current year that we're in. If we look at some of our marquee programs in the district, that navigators for the exceptionally able students that we have, it's cited at these two elementary schools at Excelsior and Scenic Heights. And those kids too chose between coming hybrid, in person, or going online. And you can see the numbers there. Our enrollment has actually increased about 35% in this program. From last year, we had 163 kids, and now this year, the sum of those two is 196. Just looking at the number of, and this is one of the things where I would tell you this is what makes Minnetonka so extraordinary, is that this immersion program, about 50% of the elementary kids, so 1 out of 2 students is involved in either Chinese or Spanish, and as a former Spanish teacher, that is just a thrilling statistic to be able to say that that's where I'm working right now. And you can see building by building how it's broken down. And just as a matter of interest, this graph makes it look a little more dramatic than it is, but we're looking at less than half of a student difference in terms of like the average class size for the English program versus the immersion program. So they're both right there together. Next, we'll look at the middle schools a little bit more in depth, and here you see the enrollment for both of you. This is an errata page in your packets there. If you're following along with me there, we put in a new slide. 16 is what this one is. Just to give you an idea, the middle school has basically stayed flat in terms of enrollment. They're down just a handful of students, or less than 0.5%. In terms of the choice that the students made, families made in terms of hybrid or e-learning at grades 6, 7, and 8 are here. And overall, it's just a little bit less than 20% of those kids chose to go the full online route. Right here, just like at the elementary school where we have an effective mean, we also have an effective mean at the middle school. The way they achieve this is by having half of the kids stay back every day. So the students are only on campus 2 days a week. And what that is as if you recall the slide about the elementary schools, it's about 13 students per actual classroom gathering that's together. And we do this by department basically at that level to get an idea. We also then are going to compare this with our regional area. There's 33 school districts around us that are in this comparison group. And here, we again, our average class size in all of these department areas are just about exactly the same, or just slightly below the regional average. Now, one thing I will tell you, there are some asterisks on this, is that we are still a little bit in the process of staffing the middle school, especially in the e-learning side. We've hired 2 out of 3 teachers that we're looking for right now, and that's dropping that average down significantly. What's also going to happen, though, is that scheduling is going to get redone for those kids, and then we'll be able to use this the labor that we have a little bit more efficiently. And it hasn't been like a complete break between e-learning faculty on online versus hybrid, and so we should be able to share. So you'll see as I go through these next slides, there are some department areas that are a little bit high, but we believe, and then in e-learning it's a little bit low because we've already done that hiring there. But as we reschedule, we should be able to fix that. Here's grade 7, and there we have grade 8. On this slide again, marquee program where we had 1 out of 2 before. We've got about 40% of the children in the middle school are in one language immersion program or another, and here they are. You can see that these programs have grown a little bit actually, even though the enrollment in the school has stayed relatively flat this year. And here's Spanish. And now we'll get into a little bit more about the high school. The high school, as I mentioned earlier, has grown actually a little bit this year. It's up about 1.5% over what it was the year before. being a large comprehensive high school, there are many marquee programs at that high school, but here are just some that jump out at me. Obviously, I'm biased when it comes to the immersion program, but you're looking at about 26%, or about 1 out of 4 kids are involved in immersion. About 22% are involved in the International Baccalaureate program, either in the diploma or working towards certificates. Other big programs are Vantage, 5% of the kids are involved in that. It's Tonka Online, 14%. That's a precursor of online instruction. When we compare the high school to our regional comparison group, again, the metro area is the blue one. We tend to be below in terms of average class sizes all the way across the board there. And here's just a little bit more immersion. Since this is a K through 12 effort, we want to look at this data especially here. Here you can see the Chinese program, it's increased by about 7.5% this year, which is really good. If you read this at kind of an angle, you'll see, obviously there's some attrition. If a student that was in grade 10, we're looking at those students in grade 11 this year, and it does decrease. That was originally going to be my doctoral dissertation, but it wasn't, because there's no solution to this, but there's always an attrition when it comes to language study. Still, though, the program has grown. And the same is true for Spanish, a larger program. It's up by about 4% this year, but still there is going to be some attrition. So let me talk to you a little bit about our faculty. We hired 78 teachers, and by we, I'm using that word very broadly because I wasn't here when most of this hiring was done. It was done in the spring, and I know Ms. Klinker, my colleague, who's been busy hiring all those new paraprofessionals, is thinking, oh, that rat, taking credit for this, but because we've hired a lot more paraprofessionals than we ever have. But this year, we're actually down a little bit for teachers. Last year at this time, Mr. Alexander was reporting 92 teachers being hired, and so we're off about 15% or so. Paras, though, we've hired just a ton. We have, in the group that we brought in this year, 5 have overseas experience, much like my own these last several years, and 6 actually have foreign degrees. About 18% of the teachers that we're hiring are starting out for this is their first full-time job, but that means that 82% of them are experienced. And as you see, they bring a lot of aggregate experience, but the average is about 7 years per person that we're coming up on. 32 of our teachers come with out-of-state degrees. I'm proud to say that the largest supplier is from Wisconsin. That's great. But still, our partner schools, there's 16. That's a little bit more than folks that we've hired from across the state line. So next, I'd just like to thank, I'm about to show you a video that Andy Smith created, which is great. But I also want to thank everyone that's supported me on putting this report together. Michelle Ketchum, who no longer really has the job of sort of the registrar at the high school, she still helped me put things together. Ashley Kupfel down here, this is all her data, and it's been a joy to work with. Amy Hillstrom, my assistant, I can thank her for the visual attractiveness of the program and everything. Deanne and Stephanie at the middle schools were also instrumental in putting this all together. So let me show you some of the new teachers that we've hired. I wish I could say that I've met all of them, but my goal is to do that, just that this year. So just a moment. very much.
All right, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Does anybody have any comments or questions this evening? No, well, thank you for your very first report, and it's always good to see that. Can I ask you one question?
Yes, of
And
course.
Stacy, I think somebody asked it, but kind of addressed it when it came to Excelsior, but at middle school, has there been the request to go from one way or the other, e-learning to hybrid?
I think the experience there, and I don't hold me to this, but I've only heard the same thing. It's just been a handful of inquiries. Yeah,
Okay,
so.
just triggered a
Yeah, we're planning to, we told them before they made their choices that they could change it
November.
9 weeks.
Yep.
So we've made sure that a child who is struggling in e-learning and needs to be back in school, if the parents are willing to do it, we'll bring them back right now.
Okay.
But other students who want to come back for, they think it's safer than they believed it was in the fall, then they'll have to make a decision here in the next couple of weeks. So we're going to try to get a good handle on that.
And how is that being communicated? Emails to families or?
Yeah, we'll send out a survey to them to tell us if they want their child to come back. We've had a little bit of a trickle the other way, but we also have to be careful we don't overload any of our pods, because those are booked pretty tightly at both the high school and in their elementary schools. So, and of course in the middle school it's a little different, but so we'll be getting that information concrete soon. And then we'll do it again before the semester if we're still in this model. Hopefully we'll be able to move out of this model before too long.
Yep. Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions on the opening? No? Well, sorry, Christine.
I don't know if this is necessarily regarding the opening of schools or if you have the information, so forgive me if you don't, or maybe Dr. Peterson would. Have we had, since school started, have we had any issues with teachers who have had to quarantine or aren't able to be in the classroom who at first had mentioned that they would like to be? And how is that working?
So, for example, like the staffing of the
because I know it was
that,
such a logic puzzle to get everything to work.
It was, and it was one of these like bread and fishes moments that we had just the number of people with some kind of medical necessity that we were able to assign them to e-learning. So that was good. Now, of course, the to impede the spread of the virus, there are very stringent rules about whether a person should come back, like even if they have one symptom and things like that. So we've been dealing with that on a I would say a relatively daily basis. And the good thing is, we have a sufficient enough pool of subs that we can cover those openings when a teacher needs to be out for 2 or 3 days until symptoms subside or things like that. So it's worked. Our priority is to try to connect the teacher to the classroom technologically so that there's no interruption in instruction and it's not just a constant cavalcade of subs, because I do think the demand should be there. But I looked at the data and we're actually ahead this year of where we were last year when there wasn't a pandemic racing. So it's like our absentee of a number for teachers is down, and as is for the kids that are here. But of course we're dealing with a smaller group on both sides. So it's interesting that we're managing. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you. And it's great to see the video. I did miss the new staff luncheon this year, so it's great to see the video, and welcome to all of the new staff to the district.
Yeah, we can thank Andy for that, because it wasn't easy to corral everyone like it was the years past, so for sure.
Good, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to our next agenda item, which will be the enrollment report. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, not to confuse these two items, because they both talk about enrollment, but this enrollment report is more about the changes in open enrollment and how that's evolved for our district. As you know, open enrollment has been a major source of revenue for the district to provide better educational opportunities for our resident students. And so families have continued to seek out Minnetonka. We still have kids on the waiting list, and Many of them are not ready to change now after school started, but we ended the year with several on the waiting list. So Jackie Getty does this report, and I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm excited to present this year's annual enrollment report. Minnetonka Schools does use open enrollment to grow revenue, to avoid budget cuts, to keep our classroom sizes small, and to fund innovative programs that benefit resident students. While we are nearing capacity in our schools, we will need to welcome open enrollment as we have been to maintain our current enrollment levels. Having a robust and thriving school district and not closing schools benefits the entire Minnetonka community, and it increases property values to live in a community that offers one of the top school districts in the state and perhaps in the nation. Grade levels this year are between 802 students and 896 students, but resident kindergarten alone, without the added open enrolled students, is only 549. If you look at the numbers, our total enrollment in Minnetonka right now, at least at September levels, was 11,052 students. That does change. It fluctuates a student or two every few days, so that's the latest number that I have. Open enrollment is at 3,830 students, and that is about 35% of our student population. And then, as you see by education level, in our high school, it's about 32% of our high school students are open enrolled. In the middle schools, it's about 33%. And in our elementary schools, it's at 37.5%. And we know that many young families hope to move into our district. We do hear that regularly from realtors, that many of the buyers that they see are families that are already open enrolling into our district. The number of districts that the students that open enroll into our district come from is at 50. This number last year was 42, so we certainly have seen some big growth there. And it is interesting how it breaks out in terms of which districts. These are the districts that open enrolled students primarily come from, and the numbers where you see plus or minus, that's the number drop or rise over last year coming from that district. Hopkins is the district where most of the students from open enroll come from. It's 1,011 this year. Then Eastern Carver, Eden Prairie, West Tonka, Wayzata, Waconia, Robbinsdale, Osseo, Maple Grove, and Minneapolis and St. Louis Park. And last year, the only thing that changed on this list were the last two. They flip-flopped. And you can see the ones that we marked with niche.com ratings. It's interesting that so many of the top school districts that are ranked by niche.com still the families choose to have their students come here. And we are ranked first by niche.com, and our teachers are ranked first as well in the state. Another just note of those who are driving the farthest to bring their students to our district come from Red Wing, Brainerd, St. Cloud, Farmington, Rosemont, and Lakeville this year.
Brainerd.
Brainerd, I know.
All
right?
Yeah.
So this is a study that's done every year by the Metropolitan Educational Cooperative Service Unit, or the Metro ECSU. They put out a class study size of 32 school districts in the Twin Cities metro area that submit their class size data, including ours. And as you can see in grades 1 through 6, Minnetonka Schools is lower than the metro area average. And in some grades, we're the lowest in the metro area, actually. I think it was first grade we were first. In kindergarten, we are just over the metro area average by about 0.2%, and this is last year's data, so it's not exactly the same as Dr. Cyrus's because this is a full school year, and then they look back at that data. So this is from the 2019-20 school year. And then there's a link there, and we'll have this up as well online in case people want to kind of look deeper into this study. It's a full packet of information. So through a strategic enrollment growth model and by using open enrollment to help the district reach target enrollment levels, our school district has brought in an additional $231 million since 2007, with the majority of that money going to provide more opportunities and lower class sizes for resident students than would have ever been possible without that added revenue. This is the money that's come into the district because of open enrollment this year alone, $28.2 million. The reputation of having a high-quality program really keeps our district in demand as a district of choice for families. And here you see the cycle of excellence, our ability to deepen signature programs, to provide innovative teaching and learning practices, to retain teachers and staff, and to enhance the student experience really attracts students to our district. This in turn then grows financial resources for our district. And as most of the core costs of operations are met already with the revenue coming in from resident students, those remaining funds from open enrollment allow us to fuel that cycle of excellence by investing more in those signature programs, enhancing that student experience, providing more innovative programs, and again, supporting and retaining our outstanding teachers and staff. And those strong enrollment numbers have been key to the district's success. Minnetonka received $6,786 in general state aid and operating capital aid for each K-6 resident and non-resident student, and $8,143 for each grades 7-12 resident and non-resident student. The basic costs of operation, as I mentioned, are already in place for resident students, so each additional non-resident student really costs the district much less than a resident student would. And that means, again, that the district retains a significant amount of that revenue that can then be put back into enhancing staffing and programs for our students. Let's look at the class of 2033. This is our kindergarten class. Again, we have 862 students in that class. 549 are resident, 303 are open enrolled. If we only had resident kindergartners, the reduction in revenue this year alone would be $2.12 million. Over time, that class would be in school the 13 years they'd be in K through 12. We'd see $30.2 million less revenue without open enrollment for that class alone. These are the top reasons that families really seek enrollment in our schools: academic excellence, language immersion, innovative curriculum, personal attention, and our high potential programs and our AP and IB offerings. Minnetonka is really in a unique position to set enrollment target numbers and close classrooms or programs as they fill up. Enrollment management, we believe, is a precision activity, and when we fill a classroom or grade, we stop taking an open enrollment for that grade or classroom. It leaves us in control of that. Without it, we would not have control to add pairs or teachers if a classroom gets too full, as we would just not have the financial flexibility to do this. And then I wanted to leave you just with a slide from the annual parent survey. I know I did a more full presentation about the parent survey at the last school board meeting, and all of the results are also online, but just one indicator of the satisfaction from our open enrolled and resident families combined. Our families, 97% of them who filled out the survey felt that the quality of education in the district was excellent at 67.25%, or good, 29.33%. So that is this year's enrollment report, and I'd welcome some questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Getty. Does anybody have any questions on the enrollment report this evening? Mike?
Jackie, of course, again, very nice report going through all the data, but so we've gone from a third open enrolled to now 35%, so up a little bit. So is do we have good numbers as far as how many families in district, what that percentage is that we've captured? I know we saw those numbers before. If there was X amount of families, how much percentage of those families in district that are actually going to Minnetonka versus private schools, charter schools?
I don't have the numbers for this year. Yeah, I didn't look at that.
Yeah.
No, we can certainly get that.
Yeah, because anecdotally, I would think, I mean, I know that some have moved because, if it's e-learning and they want their kids in the classroom. I know some have opted the private school path, but it'd be good to look at those numbers too.
Yeah, I'm going to give you an update on that as soon as we get a chance to really analyze it, but there's really no pattern. There might be a few more who have homeschooled, but that's, they didn't want to do our e-learning hours and all, so they're homeschooling and trying to make the best of it. We also had probably more families decide with their kindergartner that we'll start next year. Instead of starting this fall, we'll start next year.
Okay.
So, that's if there's any sort of mini pattern, that would be it. Our kindergarten was above 900 most of the summer, and now it's at 862 or so. So a lot of that was, either homeschooling or we'll wait.
Yeah, I would have expected this year, again, we would see a drop in district,
Yeah.
just again with people
It
choosing that
wasn't like
alternative.
there
It's not
was an
trend.
exodus to any particular school or anything like that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions? No. All right, seeing none, thank you. Thank you. Great to get the enrollment report and the update at the beginning of school. I know we always see these numbers and have the opportunity to watch it almost weekly, so it's great to have that report for our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving to our next agenda item, which is the adoption of the annual report. Dr. Peterson?
Madam Chair, members of the board, the state requires us to put out an annual report. However, they're not very specific about that. So I happen to live on the border of another district. I live in Minnetonka, but very close to the border. So I get their mail. And theirs is two sides of a sheet of paper. That's their annual report. And we've always given much more of a corporate report to people in our community and as much information, good or bad, as we have. I think sometimes people think we cherry pick the good, but it's not. It's the straight stuff, and that's just how it went during the year. So people appreciate our annual report. We have requests for additional copies to send to friends or relatives elsewhere. People really value that, keep it on their coffee table at home so that people can see it when they come to visit. So Dr. Getty has been working hard with her staff on getting this year's annual report ready for the 1920 year. And so I'm going to have her review the changes and ask for your approval.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm really excited to present this final draft for you of the 2020 annual report for Minnetonka schools. As we spoke about at the last study session, each year Minnetonka uses this report as a primary tool to communicate district goals, results, and accountability to our parents and citizens across the district and other constituents. Per your direction, our annual report encapsulates this past school year, as Dr. Peterson said, and is far more comprehensive than reports of most districts. It includes not only financial data, as many do, but it also provides reports and updates on district initiatives and strategic programs and student achievement well beyond test scores. So we reviewed a draft with you at the study session 2 weeks ago, and we've included your changes in the draft that you have in front of you. So I'll just go through that. We start off the annual report, as we have every other year, with a look at your goals for the year ahead. So each year we do share the board goals, and these are the 4 that you have outlined for the year ahead. They are student well-being, excellence and belonging, diversity, equity, inclusion, district strategic plan, and multimodal learning. For the full language on each goal, we encourage readers to visit the school board goals page of the district website. The first feature in the annual report this year is on student well-being, goal number 1 from last year, also this year, but we look back at what we accomplished over the course of the last year. We really outline the work of our student support services team and of Dr. William Deichel, who was brought in to do an assessment of what we have in place and to give us recommendations for the year ahead. The article also talks about the creation of the Mental Health Advisory Group, which is made up of students, parents, staff, and community partners. And that advisory group has been meeting, and it will provide ongoing support and suggestions to district initiatives. Our next section is ACT highlights, which looks prettier in the book than it does here on my screen with this graph. And the ACT is used by, of course, many colleges and universities as a reliable and consistent measure of academic preparedness. For the 3rd year running, our ACT average score is 27.7. That is the highest composite score in MHS history. The average score for the top 100 students for the class of 2020 was 34.7. The top 200, it was 33.3, and for the top 400, it was 30.8. 16 students from the class of 2020 earned a top score of 36 on the ACT. Already for the class of 2021, we have 3 students who have earned that score. As Dr. Peterson said, some of the information that we share, it isn't the information we wish we could share at this time. The ACT tests were canceled in the spring and over the summer, so typically this number would be much higher by now. However, our kids from the class of 2021 do have the opportunity to take the test now going forward in October and beyond, so we'll probably see that number grow quite a bit. We hope. These are our National Merit semifinalists, and we're pleased to share that we have 15 National Merit semifinalists and 36 National Merit commended students from the class of 2021 who were recognized through the scholarship competition. Looking back to 2002, if we look back all the way, we had just 2 National Merit semifinalists and 7 commended students. We also had 44 graduates last year who earned the International Baccalaureate diploma, and of those, 20 earned the IB bilingual diploma in either Chinese or Spanish. We have a chart here that shows how our students rank internationally. The latest data from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development's study shows that Minnetonka students outperformed their 15-year-old counterparts in countries and economies around the world. Minnetonka students were first in reading, second in science, and third in math. Our advanced placement numbers are exceptional. At the end of last year, 66 students were named National AP Scholars. 26 students from the class of 2021 and 2022 have already earned this designation. We had 278 AP Scholars with distinction last year, up from 254 in 2019, or 2018-19, and 128 AP Scholars with honor, as well as 207 AP Scholars. 85% of our seniors tell us they are college-bound. Our students enrolled in approximately 180 different institutions in the U.S. and abroad. So each year in the annual report, we do put a list of those colleges and universities and the numbers enrolled in each. 76% of our graduates in 2020 told us they are attending 4-year colleges and universities. 9% said they're attending 2-year colleges or universities, and 11 students told us they were entering military service. Another feature story that we had in the annual report this year was to feature our COVID-19 response planning and the e-learning that took place in the spring when school buildings across the state suddenly closed due to COVID-19. The article really features those innovative and comprehensive planning aspects done by administrators and teachers, and the creative and engaging ways that our students and our teachers found to stay connected throughout those school building closures. We do offer an update on signature programs, and we interviewed several students, not only for that e-learning story, but also for our signature program story, so that we could hear from our students about how programs such as Vantage, programs such as Minnetonka Research, Momentum, and Tonka Online were really impacting them. Minnetonka Research completed its 4th year in 2019-20, and students continue to have just an amazing experience in that program. We had 75 students participating. 10 of them were returning for a 2nd year, 1 for a 3rd year. We also highlighted Vantage, our pre-professional studies program at MHS. 338 students participated in Vantage last year, and more than 1,000 volunteers came together to make that program a success. Students are using Tonka Online to map out their 4-year plans, to meet graduation requirements, to pursue new interests, and to make time in their schedules for programs like Vantage and IB and Minnetonka Research. And we've seen huge increases in the number of students who are taking Tonka Online classes. Over a period of 5 years, it grew from 176 students to 1,851 last year. And the district launched Momentum, its design and skilled trades program, reshaped from a program formerly named Tech Ed. The feature article that we have in the annual report on Momentum outlines the new opportunities for high school students who are interested in the trades, and you'll also hear from students about their role in helping to shape the program and what they see for the program in the years to come. We put an article in on cost effectiveness in facilities and really had a great opportunity to highlight the work of Executive Director of Finance and Operations Paul Bourgeois and his team for all of the work that they do in areas such as investments and rebondings and transportation expenditures and savings in facilities due to LED lights and solar gardens, and all of the things they do really to be good stewards of every dollar that comes into this district. We did a bigger section on the annual parent survey than we have in the past to really pull out those highlights by grade level and show families what parents are saying across the different grade levels and to the administration. We also have the full parent survey on the website for people that want to see all of the results and all the comment summaries. The points of pride is one of our favorite sections to work on for the annual report. It's a highlight for people to read, I think, as well. It features achievements in academics and athletics, the arts, service, and staff achievements as well. And this year there were so many incredible accomplishments. The section is actually 6 pages long, and that's with so many things being canceled in March. I think if it hadn't been, it would have been 8. So it's really exciting to see so many things that we still were able to put into this. So again, academic achievements to the different activities and awards won in those areas, to service accomplishments, and to the arts, so many accomplishments there. And then in our district staff, we have highlights of things like the Power of Influence Award that was received by retiring head football coach Dave Nelson, and an award Dr. Peterson received from fellow superintendents for his more than 50 years as a public school superintendent. So congratulations there. Well, this is, again, a few of the pictures from that section of the annual report. Community education. Our community education team does an absolutely outstanding job, and it is always fun to highlight and talk about the programs and opportunities offered through MCE to children of all ages. We focused on highlighting our early childhood program, Minnetonka Preschool, Explorers Club, our adult and youth programs, our events, and also volunteer opportunities. And two, as I was going through these photos, we'd look and we'd say, we're not showing social distancing or we're not showing masks, and I had to remind myself that so many of these photos are about last year. This is meant to be a capture of last year, so just one thing to think about as you're reading through this. Again, I spoke about this in the enrollment report, but we really wanted to share broadly with residents, too, that strategic approach to enrollment, that cycle of excellence, how it feeds into itself, and how we make that work and how that works for us with open enrollment. As Sarah White showed us earlier today, we have a summary report on the world's best workforce, and we captured the measures that could be captured this year, and for the ones that couldn't because the testing didn't take place, we did a look back at the past 5 years to just show that progression in those areas. And the full report, as she said, will be on the website. And then we end the annual report with our summaries of prudent financial management and what our finance team does and how money is spent, how it's directed, and to show that efficiency in per pupil spending. And also, of course, to highlight the Moody's AAA rating, and that for the, see if I can grab my notes here. Oh, and that we're pleased to report we have again achieved the Excellence in Financial Reporting Award. We've had this designation every year since 1994. So following this board meeting, and with your approval, the 2020 annual report will be mailed to every district resident and parent, distributed to staff, and included in welcome packets for new families. We also post it on the district website as an online interactive publication with additional multimedia links to videos and other pages across the website, and relay this incredible success stories of our students, staff, and district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any comments or questions on the annual report?
Can we approve it first?
Yeah, we probably should make a motion to approve it first. So let's start with the action. Can I have a motion to approve the, to adopt the annual report?
So moved.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second? Christine, thank you. Any comments or questions on the annual report?
Just a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Just want to commend you, Jackie, and your staff on a great report. It really is, a comprehensive report, and really shows the transparency of the district when it comes to our programs, our academics, feedback from the community and families, as well as our finances. And so it's fun to see all the accomplishments, and and especially over my 3 years on the board and, I don't know, 19 years in the district, it's fun to see how that report has grown and really how you've taken it and put your stamp on it, making it much more visual and all the infographics and everything else in it. So I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks so much, thanks. Anybody else? Mike?
Yeah, no, I mean, just echoing Chris's comments, I mean, it's, and I could see why your neighbors and other people request this report, because you just keep taking it to the next level. And I think having those hyperlinks in, too, as people look at it online and can click into those various points, just makes it that much easier for the community to go after the information they really want to see. The one question I had, though, I just wanted to see on that page that we're recapping, kind of this last class, we've got 99% of the seniors graduated, and I just wanted to say, we had 95.7 in the world's best workforce. So just those two, just ensuring that those two tie out.
Yep, I'll check that and make sure that we have the right number.
But otherwise, exceptional.
I think this is really reporting seniors, how many graduated of that class. This is really probably a better data point here.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that those two numbers do check out.
The other one is so subject to tracking kids who have left your district. And so all of the districts deal with the same thing across the country. This has been kind of mandated across the country. And so there's really not a good way to track kids who have moved to another district. So somebody moves to San Antonio and then they drop out. Is that our dropout? Yeah, it is on the report, but they dropped out in San Antonio. So it's things like that that really make it hard to have that other number that we get from the state be more accurate.
But so this number, 99%, would be how many students of
the senior class, how many graduated?
Like day one school year of their senior year to the end.
Yeah.
That's this number.
By student, not by number. So, we kind of wipe out the kids who have come in, so that they don't get, otherwise you could get 102% if you counted the kids who come in. So if they are here day one of their senior year and if they're graduating, so it's a very small dropout rate for, 8 or 9 kids throughout the year. Well, we would like to have it be 100%, obviously.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions? No, I have, thank you to you and your team. And thank you for taking all of our feedback at that last meeting and incorporating it in here. I do see that Dr. Peterson's page is still in Latin, so that is.
It's going to remain that way.
Very intelligent district.
We'll put a Google Translator on that.
Just put it out there, see if anybody notices.
So with that exception, right, that is the additional.
Yeah, we'll be added in, yes.
Okay. But no, thank you to your entire department. It's a lot of work and we appreciate all the work that goes into it. Anybody have any comments or questions, any additional comments or questions before moving? Okay. So all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have an annual report. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jackie. We are now going to move to the second reading of Policy 504, Student Dress Code and Grooming Code. Dr. Peterson.
So, Madam Chair, members of the board, this is one of the policies that you wanted to have us examine this year, and it's on student dress and grooming. And the major focus of the changes has come from recommendations that we got from MSBA. So the previously underlined items were added at that time when I presented the policy proposal to you at the first reading. And then in the underline and yellow highlight are additions since you worked on it the last time. So if you keep going, we'll just keep probably color coding the changes so you kind of track where all they came from.
Yeah. So for clarification for the board, this is just a second reading. We're not adopting this evening, correct?
The second reading, you can adopt it tonight or keep looking at it. So
Okay.
there's no, as I understood all of these policies, you wanted community input if there's going to be any. And, you know, you had people
Tonight?
comment about the policy tonight, but they offered no real suggestions.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any comments on our policy? Oh, John, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the things that was brought up around, especially under subsection 5, right? And we talked about, when we go into lists, there's always the danger of assuming things are in the list or not in the list.
Yep.
And one of the things that struck me today is from our speakers that came in tonight was that gender harassment was not called out. And I actually thought it was included as sexual harassment, but it's actually not. If you actually look at the legal definition of sexual harassment, it does not include gender harassment. So I would actually like to add gender into section 5.
So are you suggesting up where it says the message that is racist, or are you talking about after any
So it's-
form of religious, racial?
Yeah, so it says,
Okay.
or provokes any form of religious, racial, sexual, gender harassment, or violence against other individuals described in the harassment and violence policy.
Provokes any? Okay. So you're, I have to pull that 427, I don't have it on me.
Well, and some of these were in 427, but we talked about bringing them forward so people didn't have to dig into that
Right.
policy. So my
Racial
recommendation is
or-
just pull gender into the section 5 as a listed item.
So
So
where
the
does sexist go then?
What's that?
Where does sexist go then?
No.
Sexual harassment is something completely different. If you
No,
look
no,
at
no, sexist.
No,
Sexist.
so, third line from the bottom where it says provokes any form of religious, racial, gender, or sexual harassment. I think that's what the recommendation is.
Is that where you are?
Yeah.
I thought you said you were in section 5.
Yeah.
It's actually.
Number 5.
It's a number 5, sorry.
Yeah, procedure
B
5.
It's procedure
five.
5. Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah, B5.
B5.
B5, yeah, that's where I was talking.
So right above, see how MSBA is crossed out? MSBA, right
Right.
above that, the line above it,
Right.
in between the word racial and or, add gender. So it would read as any form of religious, racial, gender, or sexual harassment and/or violence against other individuals as defined in policy, district policy 427. Am I understanding
That's
that
exactly
right?
right.
Okay.
100%.
Carrie, you got that? Okay.
So my question is still the same. When you look above at line 2, the term sexist is there. Do you want to do anything with that?
I'd ask one of our linguists to look at that. It doesn't strike me, but I don't want to err on omission, so have somebody look at it. I just think when we talk about specific discrimination, right, or harassment, we list those other ones. So I'd ask somebody go back and look at it, but if we're going to list religious, racial, sexual, we should add in gender harassment as well.
Yeah, I agree with John. I guess, Dr. Peterson, your question is, do we need to add something above to restate it, or what's the question on the sexist piece?
I'm only raising that because sexist and gender are, I mean, they're not two different concepts entirely.
Yeah, if you actually look at the definition of sexual
So
harassment.
the same where John's putting it, sexual and gender are not two different concepts either under the law.
I think
So-
it could fall under the otherwise derogatory to a protected minority group if we list it out where John had suggested later in the sentence.
I would recommend putting this past our lawyer to ask if that would be.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, we can do that, but I think John's suggestion is well taken. I'm just raising the question about whether it's another concept.
I was gonna say,
You're not involved here.
Yeah.
So,
So.
It's ordered
Thank you.
out of order.
Okay. I'm sorry, but you're out of order right now, so this is the meeting, this is our meeting at the moment. And thank you. Thank you. Otherwise derogatory, I think is what we're asking.
Right.
Chris, I saw your hand.
Well, now I didn't get what did you just say?
The, afterwards, or otherwise derogatory.
yeah, I would just go back and look at it. I mean, if we need to add it above, then we'll add it above. I don't want to make an error of omission, right, by assumption. So
Yep.
just have somebody look at it.
Okay.
We're gonna get one more pass at this
Yes,
anyways.
this is a second reading, so we can absolutely take it one, so we will look at that again.
But just so I'm clear, so at least for right now, for this, we're gonna put racial/gender or sexual harassment? That's what we're looking at adding?
Racial,
Comma gender is the way I
Yep.
read it,
Yeah,
right?
agree.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks.
So with that addition, and then we will, we'll definitely look at it again.
Thank you.
Yep. Are there any other recommendations, changes?
Good question.
Yes, go ahead.
Pertains to number 4 above, when it talks about promotes threat, hate groups, or gangs. Who would be the deciding authority on what constitutes? Because we're getting rapidly changing definitions of a group that may be a hate group or to go back to Tuesday night, there was a reference to a white supremacist group that is commonly considered as a hate group or extremist group, but might have been politically embraced as a, mainstream group. So who would decide if somebody wearing something or going back, flashing a symbol that has evolved into, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, well, basically, the principal decides that. Now, if the principal has questions, then he would go to this, or he or she would go to the superintendent for that direction.
Okay. Okay.
And I would not want to list them out as they're always rapidly changing.
That was my point.
So if we start defining something now, something could develop or evolve and be a new definition next week, and then we would have to alter the policy again. So I would not, my opinion would not to list it out there. But I don't think that's what you're asking either.
No,
I guess I'm just talking this out.
Yeah, I think to Katie's point, once you start listing, then you stand the chance of leaving something out that you would have, if you'd have thought of it, you would have included. If you're general, like it is here, then the administrator can interpret that and really hit the things that you wanted to have hit.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't believe that they should be listed, but I think they're also could be, somebody wearing something that is evolving into a hate group or that kind of issue that gets overlooked or ignored,
Yeah,
It's a fine line.
having worked with principals, particularly high school principals, for 50 years, they don't really overlook those kinds of things.
Okay.
They're pretty good at deciding what's starting to emerge as a hate group or, a gang, if you will.
Okay.
John?
Yeah, one of the things we talked about, we put in the plan for this year is hiring those school resource officers, right? And I think that resource officer, I use the word officer, but it's really a student advocate, to collect that information as well. So I really think we're gonna have multiple points of influence, not just the principal, but now we're gonna have, the resource liaisons to also be a data point collection for our students.
No, they're very much attuned to what's kind of emerging out there, what's
Yeah.
going on,
That's
often before it starts to surface. And when I was in my previous district, that police department there had the foremost authority on gangs. And it was just incredible how those things, evolve and move, and, they're always changing their names and all that. So, it is helpful to have input from people who know what's going on out there. We don't have much trouble with gangs, but that doesn't mean we couldn't have. And certainly, the group that you just cited is a hate group.
Go ahead, Mark.
Just another one, down on, under C, I welcome that paragraph. The intention of the policy is not to abridge the rights of students to express political, religious, and so on. We read about a couple districts lately that have gone to both sides. So I, reading this, assume that a message such as Black Lives Matter would not be a problem with a student wearing that in the school. Is that correct?
Right, not with the student. And any of that is subject to, if it's a disruption of the school. That was the basis of Tinker, was the Tinker decision, was that if it's disruptive to the school, then you treat it as such. So if that became a disruption, it would have to be dealt with. But on the face of it, it's not.
Okay.
For students.
Right.
For employees, it's a different matter.
Christine?
Yeah, that is actually an interesting point, Dr. Peterson. Where would the employee policy, where is that covered, like you just mentioned?
Yeah, it's in section 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again, it's in section?
Section 4. 400, I should say.
Yeah,
400, yeah.
okay.
So not in this policy?
It's its own policy.
Okay.
In the 400s.
Is that something that we should look at reviewing? Or is it consistent with changes we're making here? Would they follow through, or?
That's up to you, whether you want to look at it or not.
Yeah, we
But
can-
I think we should.
Well, we can,
I mean,
we can discuss it.
sure.
I don't have it in front of me.
No, I didn't mean now, I just
I
meant.
mean,
since we were
I
doing
can
this.
tell you from experience that dealing with policies takes an awful lot of time.
Yeah.
So you're going to devote much of this year to dealing with policies, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's your main job. But you've got your plate full already with 6 or 7.
Sure. Go ahead, Christine.
I think at the last meeting when we had discussed this, we chose to do this one because it was something that we thought that we could make some immediate changes to, given especially the environment that we're in right now. But I believe that we also had said that whatever changes we made now might not be the only changes for this year, as we did want to solicit input from students and other groups. Is that the case? Like, if we review this and adopt it now, are we done? Or will we have the opportunity to come back and review it again once we solicit input from students, faculty, parents, and the public? Because I thought we were taking this one on now, just given the political environment and the upcoming election, that we wanted to make sure that there were some things clear that weren't in here prior, but that we could revisit it again.
So the way that I would open for discussion, but the way that I kind of would interpret it is once it's adopted, there wouldn't be a reason to come back to it this year. People do have the ability to come at a study session or at, like tonight, at a board meeting as it's on the agenda, and they can give us their feedback. We, as a board, have not outlined any sort of, if you will, listening session. So if that's something that the board is interested in doing, we certainly can put something more formalized out as we continue to do the policy review out of all of the ones that we have outlined. But I would believe that if we were to adopt this, I don't believe we're going that route tonight. Take this as a second reading because we're going to review that B number 5. But I would imagine once we would adopt it, we wouldn't come back to it yet in a year. I don't know if you all.
My interpretation of how we left it was that after the first reading, we were going to get our own input from the community, students and teachers, and then come back on the second reading, third reading, or whatever before we adopted it. And that was my interpretation.
That was my interpretation too.
Yeah. So before we adopted, we would have gotten our input and made changes.
So
but not to come back to it.
Yeah, so we can take this as a second reading and we can find a way to solicit that input.
Yeah, I would like to do that.
The rest of the board opinion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, that was, when I introduced these, I made that point, and nobody seemed to go anywhere with that you were in fact going to keep taking input. So, we'll do it however you want to, but I've never had the direction to go out and ask for people to input on policies. You have a meeting and study session, and it's on the agenda, and people can come and speak to it. But if you want to be, affirmative and go out and gather input, we can do that.
Christine?
Would it be possible to put it on an upcoming agenda? I mean, we did hear some people tonight who had some opinion, but there wasn't specific things that we could incorporate into a policy. So I would be interested in hearing what, I would hate to address this policy and people feel that we didn't address it. I think we're making some really good changes that we need to. Is it everything that we need to make? I'm not sure. I mean, on face value, I think we've covered a lot of things, but maybe there's some wording or some nuances that we could get some feedback on.
Well, we'll have a third reading if we take John's suggestion and make sure to clarify. We will have a third reading. It will be on an agenda.
Okay.
So there'll be opportunity for feedback. So that's what I would propose that we move forward.
So just a point of clarification, hopefully for you also, but for me, as we address the policies, not only this policy here, but the ones that we have outlined for this school year, do you want to do that individually policy and address and get that community feedback on a one-by-one basis, or are you looking to do it as like an event or an opportunity for those to come and address all of them at once? Okay.
No,
I just am looking for a little clarification so I know how you would like to move forward.
Well, I think that the process of having 3 separate readings allows us to have community feedback, right? Because it's on the agenda. We had speakers come tonight to express their thoughts. We're also getting emails, on topics from citizens. So this is on a topic again, it'll be on a topic next time, so we'll have the opportunity, to get feedback. I think if there's other areas on our goals, that we want to solicit broader community feedback, we could have a listening session and, on certain topics. But I think the policies, we could decide there's a policy we'll want to do that, but I think the 3 readings is, for me, sufficient.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. John, I see a nod. Christine?
Yeah, I'm fine with that also. I think my only concern is we did get some community comments tonight, but I don't know how I would necessarily take that feedback and incorporate it into what we're reading now. So if we have a third reading, it's going to look very similar to what we're reading right now with the exception of John's suggestion. So at what point would we be able to incorporate any community comments or community feedback? What stage is that?
Well, at any of the readings, you could incorporate it. So,
Understood, but we got comments tonight, and I'm not necessarily clear what recommendations would come of those. They just asked that we look and address certain things, but I didn't hear specific items. So I'd like more clarity on that before to incorporate a third reading. Like I said, if we have it on the agenda the next time, the third reading is going to look very similar to the second, although we heard community comments.
We as board members would have to propose those changes.
yeah.
That would be up to you to propose those changes to communicate.
Okay.
So,
Or all of us.
so I would think that we could take that third reading and also have an opportunity for the community if we solicit teacher feedback. You had mentioned going out and soliciting the feedback or the input, excuse me. So
Well, I guess I need to be clear.
Right.
Do you want that kind of going out and saying, please give feedback on this? Or is it sufficient to have it at your board meetings and people who care can come into a board meeting and make a recommendation?
So, does anybody have any comment on that?
I think it's sufficient. I mean,
That's-
that's the policy work that we do.
That's how we
That's how
normally
we've
do the
always-
policy
yeah.
work, so that's what I would be, that's how we have handled the policy work in the past. So we, as a board, take the opportunity to read, get the recommendations, review, discuss. If it's not, and, if we have additional changes, we bring it back for another reading. If anybody wants to come to the meeting, they can comment. We have been getting emails with feedback, so we can take that feedback, and as we discuss, we can, have the discussion of how to incorporate that. And when we feel that, whether it's 3 readings, 5 readings, I don't know how long it will take, but when we are ready, then we could adopt it. That's how I would address the policy, only because that is how we have done it in the past. Christine?
Okay, that makes things a little bit clearer. Thank you for that, since the first time I'm going through this. I think it's also similar for people who are participating in community comments, that it was on the agenda and people were talking about 504 that kind of digressed. So maybe if next time we have a reading and it's on 504, we say, please come with specific recommendations or suggestions or issues that you might have or would like us to think about in this. Because I think people came tonight to talk about 504, but I didn't really come away with much of an action item on that. So that's what I'm looking for from the community. I would like to be able to incorporate community feedback into our revisions of these policies, but I think maybe the community wasn't necessarily clear on exactly their deliverable either.
And the other thing that I would say to that is that we also have to look at this from a legal perspective too. So we don't, even the recommendations, as we look at adding in gender, to make sure that we're not omitting something or that we are covering it, I would want to make sure that we legally the district is protected too. So even with all the recommendations, it doesn't necessarily mean that it would be incorporated because of that legal perspective,
Absolutely.
right? So,
Absolutely.
So just for the community to consider that too, as we listen to that feedback.
Agree.
But I would say that that is the way we handle our policy. That's the way we've done it in the past, is continue to have a reading, and we are able to discuss and make those changes. And when we're ready to adopt it is when we do. So tonight, we would not be doing that tonight, and it's not even on the agenda listed as an adoption of this policy. It is listed as a second reading. So I would like to ask if there's anything in addition that you would like to discuss, any changes. We will certainly go back and continue to look and consult with MSBA and about policy, letter B, number 5. But is there anything else with the changes that were added in yellow, or anything else that you would like to add for discussion this evening? So we will bring this back for another reading.
At the November meeting.
So the November meeting. Yeah.
November 5th
yeah.
meeting.
I'm sorry, I'm lost on days
Yeah.
already. My,
Because you can only adopt things at the regular meeting.
do we want to have it as a third reading at the study session?
You can
Yeah.
have 15 readings.
Right, so I'm wondering if we want to have another reading before we bring it then to the November. So we can discuss that as board leadership to take a look to see what our study session agenda looks like, and we will get back to you on that, but that would be another option, is we could bring it back to that study session as a third reading. So if you're okay with that, that's how we would like to proceed, and then we will handle our other policies that we have outlined in our goal work with similar fashion, reading, community input. If anybody wants to continue to give us emails or phone calls or come here to a meeting to talk to us, that's how we will solicit that community feedback,
Yep.
take it back to another reading and move from there. Does that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, does that work for you, Dr. Peterson?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
I would clarify, though, that it will never be presented as approval. It'll always be another reading.
Oh.
And then if the board concludes it's ready for approval, then you approve it.
correct.
So generally, you approve on the second reading. That's
Okay.
your general practice. But this one and others, we anticipated that they could have several readings.
Mm-hmm.
And so all that's proper, but I just wanted to be clear that it will never say adoption. It'll say 15th reading.
Thank you.
And then if you decide the 15th reading is sufficient, then you adopt it.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that for me on the agenda, that it will never be read as an adoption. It'll always come across as that reading. So we will look at where we will add this third reading of policy 504 into the upcoming study session or board meeting with continued looking at that item. Anything else before, for changes or recommendations, questions on policy 504? Okay. All right, thank you. We will come back for a third reading on this. Does that help, Dr. Peterson? Okay. Okay, so we can move on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of bid for re-roofing at MHS, MME, and MMW for summer 2021. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, there are several items on the agenda tonight to get next summer's work ready. We believe that bidding early generally will get better bids because the contractors will know they have this job locked in for next year. And I think that's been a good strategy. You never know for sure how much hedging they feel they have to do on materials and all of that, but we think that's a good strategy. So Mr. Bourgeois is going to go over the re-roofing bids at MHS, MME, and MMW for next summer.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson. Madam Chair, members of the board, we believe in bidding early and often. The 5 items that we have in sequence here actually are for total of 8 major projects. The first one is for bids at MHS, MME, and MMW for re-roofing. Basically, all the bids came in well under budget, which in long-term maintenance then allows us to actually then use any savings below budget to actually do some additional work and move some things up to continue to keep our schools in a state of good repair. Our first bid at MHS was low bidder was Palmer West Construction for $269,000. They were also the low bidder for $398,890 at MMW. And then Central Roofing Company was a low bidder at $211,228 at MME. The other thing I'd just like to mention is when we do re-roofing, it's not like your house where you do the whole thing at one time usually. These buildings are very large, and what we do is we do sections of the roofs at a given time. So you might see in over a period of time, you might see one year and then another, the same building getting different sections. So we asked you to approve the low bids, and we'd get contracts going for the summer 2021 work. Thank you.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the recommended acceptance of the low bid of the Palmer West Construction in the amount of $269,000 for re-roofing the Minnetonka High School as in summer 2021. The accepted low bid of Palmer West Construction for re-roofing Minnetonka Middle School West in summer 2021 as presented, and the low bid of Central Roofing Company for re-roofing Minnetonka Middle School East in summer 2021 as presented. Thank you, Mike. Is there a second? Chris? Oh. Okay, Chris, thank you. Any comments or questions for Mr. Bourgeois? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the acceptance of bids for restroom long-term maintenance at Minnetonka High School for summer 2021. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is a bid to remodel the restroom that's next to the black box at the high school, the original black box. So this was built in '96, so it's not exactly old, but we are going to upgrade it, and we have that work for next summer. So Mr. Bourgeois will describe the bids.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. Madam Chair, members of the board, this board item actually looks a little bit unusual. We actually had 13 bidders, but only 2 of them actually bid on the full project. There were 2 addendums that went out after the original documents. And 2 of the bidders actually checked to make sure they had all the addendums, and they bid, so they gave us a complete bid. The other vendors actually did not acknowledge the second bid, and the second addendum was some significant work above the ceiling with the ventilation system. So in that situation, we have to acknowledge the people who bid. In essence, you know, a marathon is 26 miles and I believe 312 yards. So we had to acknowledge the people who actually ran the 26 miles and 312 yards, not 26 miles. So everybody who did not acknowledge that addendum submitted a non-compliant bid, and 2 entities did submit compliant bids. So it was out there for them to basically get, but they did not go out and get the last pieces of information. And that's, you know, doing addendums on projects such as these is not an unusual thing in the construction industry. It's pretty standard. So companies tend to have, or should have, the ability to continually go back when they're putting together their bids to go back and check to make sure that there is that there might not be additional addendums out there to make sure that they're submitting a full compliant bid. But the good thing about it though is that our budget estimate for this project was $300,000, and we had 2 compliant bids that are significantly below that. So the low bid was Morcon Construction at $187,500. And so we are recommending that that you approve the low, compliant bid of Morcon Construction for $187,500.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the low bid of Morcon Construction as presented for the restroom long-term maintenance project at Minnetonka High School? Thank you, Christine. Is there a second? Mike, thank you. Any comments or questions for Mr. Bourgeois?
Also, just for clarification, is this is the bathroom that's right outside the main gym?
Yes, by the concession stand.
We've discussed this one before, yes.
We are not going to put anybody's name on it.
Mike wants his name outside of it.
This is one of my early requests, so I'm glad to see this work being done. This is fantastic.
Yes, you are.
No plaque for you, but anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the acceptance of bids for the mechanical system long-term maintenance at MME and MMW for summer 2021. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we are continually upgrading our mechanical systems and making sure they're functioning at the highest possible levels. And so there's some work to be done at both MME and MMW. That work would be done in the summer of '21. So Mr. Bourgeois will describe the bids.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pearson. Madam Chair, members of the board. These are actually for work on 2 mechanical rooms that are in the center of each middle school. And we had done some work on the one at MME, but this is actually with the available money about 5 or 6 years ago, and this is finishing it. So there's about $320,000 worth of additional work to replace some of the original 1964 equipment. And then at MMW, we had not done any work on that, and it's the last mechanical room in the district since we really started long-term maintenance that we have not totally reconfigured and taken out all the really old stuff and put in new up-to-date efficient stuff. And so, we just keep working our way around trying to, so this is the last major mechanical room that we have to totally reconfigure for quite some time. And so the low bid for MMW was Schreiber Mullaney Construction at $1,053,890. And then the low bid for MME was NASF Mechanical Contractors for $320,155. And we're asking you to accept the low bids for those two projects. And they're both under budget.
Great. Can I have a motion to approve the low bid of NASF Mechanical Contractors in, as presented for the mechanical system replacement work summer 2021 at East, and then the low bid of Schreiber Mullaney, if I'm saying that right, construction for the mechanical system as presented at West?
So moved.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second? Thanks, Mike. Any comments or questions? Mike?
Yeah, just a question, Paul. So what happens in the case where they get in, they start doing the work, and something unforeseen, crops up that either the district didn't know, and certainly they didn't know when they were making the bid? I assume that happens once in a while. Then what's the process of dealing with this? Are they on the hook because they said they would complete this project as scoped out? And
well, this is mechanical system work, and so it's a little bit more clear because the components are pretty much easy to identify. But you do run into that, particularly when you're doing some type of renovation where you're moving walls or knocking walls, and something from 50 years ago was not on the plans. And in that situation, there's something called a change order, and you basically negotiate if there's additional work that was not in the specifications and plans. You basically negotiate a price. So you try to keep, and there could be some unforeseens in this too, but we try to, like if for some reason we find some asbestos or something that in some place where it wasn't documented. So we, if we're under budget, we'll probably save some of the money under budget just for unforeseens. Because it's like once you're into it, you really have to keep going. It's just kind of like on, I guess, the Property Brothers or anything like that it's like, oh, hey, we found something. And it's like, well, they got to keep going because the house is torn apart. It's very similar, but it's a little bit different than what they do on TV. There's basically a kind of a negotiation process about give us a price, let's look at it. Well, what else can we do? Can we do something different with it and try to get the lowest price and stay within the resources available?
so the only way it'd come back to the board is if that amount that, for that new, the change order was above the total initial budget approved.
For the ones that, basically we don't come back for items that are within the budget estimates, within the resources of the overall budget. So knock on wood, we haven't had that happen, but we have had some times where we had bids where the bid came in over budget and we rejected all bids. And went back to the drawing board.
I remember that, yeah.
It's always possible that you could run into such a huge change order that it could have been a different bid had you started over, but it's too late to do that.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. And then moving on to the acceptance of bids for replacement of R22 HVAC systems at Excelsior Elementary for summer 2021. Dr. Peterson?
Yep, so R22 is a Freon system, and as Paul has told you before, we're phasing all of our systems out of that use. And so we've got a project coming up next summer at Excelsior Elementary to get that replaced. So Mr. Bourgeois will go over the bids.
Thank you, Dr. Peterson, Madam Chair, members of the board. If you've been to Excelsior in the back, there's 3 big units that are sitting on kind of a big shelf that was constructed to hold them. And they're installed in 1993. They have R22. The units are starting to get a little bit older in age, and it's harder to get replacement parts for them. But also, if they actually would fail, you can't get new R22 to actually keep them going. So then we would be stuck with no air conditioning until we could get a new unit built, get it delivered after 4 or 5 months, and then have to figure out a way to install it. So we're trying to be proactive and getting these large units removed while we can. These are some of the biggest R22 units on our list. So we're asking you to give us the authority to take the low bid of NASF Mechanical Contractors for $320,807 to basically replace these units during the summer of 2021. The interesting thing with R22 is you can't just actually take the units off and put a new one on, because the piping system is different for the different type of freon. You actually have to take out all the old pipes and put new pipes in besides.
Sounds like a big project. All right, may I have a motion to approve the low bid of Nassau Mechanical Contractors as presented for R22 HVAC mechanical unit at Excelsior Elementary? Mike, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Any comments or questions? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, and then moving on to the approval of bid for cabinet replacement at Clear Springs Elementary for summer 2021. Dr. Peterson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, as you can imagine, with all the cabinets throughout the district, over time they get pretty battered and beat up, and I don't think our staff or students abuse them, but it's just wear and tear on cabinets, and we all replace our kitchen cabinets over a period of time, and that's what we're doing now with our schools. We've got Clear Springs coming up next summer. Paul?
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, we're working our way around, particularly in the 1956 sections of the elementary school. So we've been working on Clear Springs because it's, and then we'll move on to Grove, and then we'll go through Deep Haven and Excelsior too for those older sections. But it just, economies of scale, it's less expensive to kind of do chunks at a particular school. So we're almost finished at Clear Springs, and this is for 11 rooms. And Schreiber Mullaney Construction was a low bidder at $209,890. And we're well under the original budget estimate, so we ask that you would allow us to basically get this project done next summer.
Great. May I have a motion to approve the low bid of Schreiber Mullaney Construction as presented for Clear Springs Elementary Cabinet Project?
So moved.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second? Mike, thank you. Any comments or questions? All right, seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. Going to be a busy summer 2021.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Christine. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mark. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Are there any board reports this evening? Go ahead, Christine.
I do. I have a report from the foundation. The tour of tables this year will be a virtual event. They are brainstorming exactly what that will look like right now. And then the Mental Health Advisory Committee met last night and reviewed all of Dr. Deichel's report. He did the presentation. It was a really good meeting. The homework for everybody on the committee is to think of families and students to participate in the focus groups.
Is there a date for the virtual event?
I don't have my notes in front of
Okay.
me. I want to say it's later than it normally is this
Okay.
year. I can't remember. I will be sure to get that.
Just looking to dog ear my calendar. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be in the evening too.
Okay.
And it's going to be open to men and women because it's virtual, so
okay.
anybody can watch it.
Very
So
good.
it's a bit of a change this year.
And then how will the focus groups be communicated?
I don't know yet.
Okay.
We're just brainstorming, like, not even really names, but maybe like specific groups and stuff like that. It was just everybody's homework takeaway.
Anybody else have any board reports? John?
Yeah, so this Monday, we had a really good community ed meeting, and Tim's meetings via Zoom are as engaging as Tim's meetings in person, very lively group. He just has an awesome set of advisors, and we walked through the Tour de Tonka results, just or Fall de Tonka, I guess it would be just an outstanding ride in support of the communities and the riders and such. And then we actually walked through the board goals, and his group was really engaged about how community ed can be a participant in support of the board goals. So just great leadership by Tim, great engagement by his advisory board. So just outstanding meeting. Good to feel that energy coming through from the community, even vis-a-vis a Zoom meeting.
That's great. Does anybody else have any other board reports this evening? All right. Dr. Peterson, Superintendent's report.
Madam Chair, members of the board, we are well into the school year now, and so I think our teachers are expressing a lot of confidence that they're getting the hang of how to manage the new way of delivering instruction, whether it be e-learning or whether it be the hybrid model with 2 classrooms or whatever. But like we all observe, almost everything is different. You heard tonight, we're eating in classrooms. I suggested that a few years ago, and I almost got run out of town, that was such a stupid idea. And, you do what you have to do. But the classroom part is really amazing. I mean, teachers are doing a good job with the streaming. So if they've got somebody in the room next door with a para, those kids are hearing the teacher teach the other kids. So they're not side by side, but they're in the same room. And so, there's so much innovation going on with technology that it's just fun to see. And I can't say enough about this creation by Laura Nelson of that app that parents can use. I mean, what a great idea. So mother's the, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. And, so they're creating a lot of good things that will probably stay. Things that we'll keep doing that way instead of going back to the way we were. So it's probably forcing more innovation than we've ever seen. And kids are happy. They're glad to be back in school. We had sophomores in yesterday at the high school. They were happy to see each other. Had juniors the week before, and it was great. They've had their 3rd year there now, and they want to be back in school. So we're certainly working on ideas for how to get kids in high school more. And the only thing that's really unnerving, I send you the Hennepin County reports on COVID, and it really is jumping right now. And that's a little unnerving because if it keeps going up, we could shut everything down and be all on e-learning. So we won't be the ones to decide that. That'll be the state, but we'll have to keep an eye on it because even our local numbers jump quite a bit. So, in the meantime, we're going to keep trying to move toward opening and trying to get ready to do that. But we also don't want to open 1 week and then 3 weeks later we've got to go some other direction. We should be sure that there's a clear path now that COVID is at this level and it's going to stay there, or it's going the other direction. So, I know it's volatile. It appears to be not subject to weather really. It's just doing its own thing. And summer didn't see much let up in the whole occurrence. But, deaths are going down. We possibly have a vaccine on the way eventually. And so, it's people need to be hopeful. I mean, that's the main thing is we keep people hopeful about this is going to end. I guess personally I've always felt that this too shall pass helps me get through life. You get into a lot of hard spots and, it's going to pass like everything else has.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I do want to assure you, I know you're hearing from some parents about how terrible e-learning is. It might be for some kids, but in general, it's an amazing way of teaching. And our teachers put a lot into it. They would love to have another storytelling to let you know the great things they're doing. Kids are engaged. We're talking about we're talking about really everybody but K through 3 being on e-learning sometime during their week. So it's that's thousands of kids who are successfully navigating the e-learning environment. And that's a credit to our kids, it's a credit to our teachers, and to our parents who are really saying, this is how we're gonna do it, and, we'll stay with it. So, don't get deterred by people who are just saying it's a terrible thing, it's not working, it's awful. Yeah, it's not working for some kids, but, it's working for most kids. That's kind of my update for now.
Thank you. Thank you. John?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. And so I appreciate that, Dr. Peterson. I have 2 freshman boys, one at University of Stout, one at the University of Minnesota. And by far and away, what we're doing for our students is way superior to the experiences they're getting at college. I mean, it's pretty bad. And I don't think, many parents have that perspective about you think things are going to be that much better when you get to college, and they're actually that much worse. How unprepared those universities were for what we've been planning for is kind of unsettling, if you will. I do think based on the community comments we get around opening schools, maybe at our next study session we could talk about the mechanics, like how will we decide, right? Because I think you saw Orono's open, but then 2 days ago Orono's closed, 2 weeks, shut down, right? And it's like, we don't, to your point, we don't want to go through that, open 1 week, closed for 2 the next. But I think we probably need to have a more granular rules of the road for opening, and maybe we can talk about that in an upcoming study session. Thank you.
The other thing that I haven't even mentioned is what happens if you have a bad situation in one school.
Right.
You could close that down tomorrow. If there are so many cases that the state says, get them out of there. You're not going to open for a while until we quarantine everybody. So that's always hanging over your head. You really go from minute to minute, wondering if we're going to hear that next rush of cases. So, and they won't come from school. They'll come from something to happen outside of school. But kids bring it to the environment.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to spend some time in the study session to just further educate the community, because some like the comments that people were talking to me on the way in, again, it was more like it was our decision exclusively. It's like, well, no, it has to be passed, by the Department of Education. They have to approve our plan. And so, again, but hopefully, right, the cases will decline over time or there's a vaccine certainly at some point in time, but in that, if it does decline to less than 10, what could that look like? And I think having a study session going through kind of the roadmap of what that looks like, or, again, community, we need to make sure we're doing our best to take the right safety precautions, because this could go the other way, and all the students would be, on e-learning. And so, and I also, my experience, obviously, son that's a 9th grader, and that engagement, the teacher's engagement, is a lot higher than it was that I saw, than last year. And it was new for everyone than last year, but the teachers are really stepping up, and he is enjoying it and thriving and figuring out a different way to get exercise. And it's fortunately it's nice outside, so as we evolve and it gets in the winter, I'm sure that will be a little bit more of a challenge. But the teachers I've seen, they're doing a heck of a good job.
Yeah. Thank you.
All staff are doing a great job. Teachers, paras, all support staff, everybody is. So wonderful. Does anybody else have any announcements? The only thing that I wanted to share with the community and with fellow board members is the ICA is having an event. It's their, I'm going to get the name wrong. It's their Great Taste event, which is an online event, and it's a fundraiser for the ICA food shelf coming up, and it's going to be October 8th, 7 p.m. online, virtual, silent auction, live auction. It's a great way to help support our ICA food shelf, who in return supports so many of our community members. I had the opportunity to speak to one of the directors the other day, and they shared with us their need has shifted. And what is really interesting, and I wanted to just share with you all, is their need for school snacks. They are changing, really what their need is and what they're seeing. So just something to think about as you think about ICA Food Shelf and how they help support our schools, I'm sorry, not our schools, our community. So just keep that event on your mind. Any other announcements? May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second? Thank you, Christine. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Meeting adjourned.